Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm and you are watching second part of What If Kid Naruto Was a Life-Sucking Monster. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
To you, it's not a question. Naruto's spine tingled as the darkness coiled itself around his mind. Naruto, be kind, come on. Let's go. When Naruto entered the academy hall, he found it to be less fascinating than he had anticipated. There were no hanging drapes or weapons scattered about. The entire interior was made of wood. It simply had the appearance of a typical school. Naruto had anticipated something more dazzling. Suddenly, Naruto realized that all of the classroom doors were closed and that the doors had numbers on them. I should have asked the old man which room it was, but I forgot. As he moved slowly down the hallway, Naruto glanced into each classroom. For a moment the majority of them were deserted, and the ones that weren't were occupied by pupils considerably younger than himself. Where is it? The third is going to be ticked if I miss the team assignment. Hey, Naruto. Naruto turned to see a boy his age with spiky hair, wearing a short jacket with the Nara clan symbol on both sleeves, grayish-brown pants, and a fishnet undershirt with his forehead protector around his left arm. Shikamaru. Nara Shikamaru. Naruto could hardly recall his identity. He is Akamichi Choji's close friend, and the two of them had played together a few times when they were younger, but that was about it. Strange guy. Bored all the time. He is not excited by anything. With his typical slouch in his step, Shikamaru said, I heard that you were joining us today. How did you know that? Shikamaru didn't appear upset, rather, he appeared intrigued. Are you kidding? News of your induction into the ninja system has spread like wildfire. You even skipped all the ninja training that we had to do, you bastard. I heard you stopped our teacher Mizuki. That was amazing. Yeah, Naruto wasn't sure how much he had been told, but it appears that Mizuki's disintegration upon his last encounter with him has been contained, at least for the time being. Naruto looked behind Shikamaru and saw Choji rounding the corner with a packet of barbecue chips in his hands. Hey. Shikamaru, where are you? Hey, Naruto. Long time no see, Naruto said. Hi, Choji. Naruto had always liked Choji. He was a cheerful man who shared his food without fear, with the exception of the last bite. Perhaps in his spare time, Naruto spent a lot of time with him. Choju smiled broadly and asked, so you here for the induction? For as long as he could, Naruto maintained the smile. Whoa, does anyone know? I assumed that this was some sort of secret. Naruto was keen to shift the conversation, saying, yeah actually, do you know where it is? I think I am late. Naruto sighed in relief, saying, not really, the meeting got pushed back by 10 minutes, he could not afford to make a mistake. Great, where is it? Shikamaru gestured to a door at the end of the hallway and said, just over there. Nice. Shikamaru was occasionally glancing at Naruto as they made their way to the end of the hall, while Choji appeared to be enjoying one of his many snacks. Naruto disliked being treated like a museum exhibit, so he asked, what is the problem? Shikamaru's head was tilted slightly, but Naruto couldn't tell if it was out of curiosity or his posture. Nothing, it's just what happened out there. He asked. Choji's ears perked up, but he continued to eat at a steady pace. Out where? Naruto was well aware of what he was referring to, but just in case. You know what I mean. Your place in the hills. Oh well, at least the specifics are still unclear. Tell them about Mizuki's deliciousness and Naruto inform them that they will be the next. You can crush them like a bug. Tell Shuige that he will become stuck if he jumps for joy because he is so fat. Ha 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 ha, ha 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 ha. The stress of having an uncontrollable thought is beginning to wear on Naruto, as he pinched the bridge of his nose. Naruto? Asked Shikamaru. Naruto paused and concentrated on the current issue. Oh yeah. Naruto pondered the next sentence he should say. Some unexpected circumstances occurred. Shikamaru arched an eyebrow and asked, like? Naruto grinned like a Cheshire cat. The cryptic response appeared to please the darkness, who said, you're going to have to find out, won't you? Ha 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 ha. Naruto, you were very nice. Shikamaru's eyes sagged a bit after finishing his bag of chips. Choji took another one out of his pocket, this time containing chips with herb flavor. Naruto chuckled as he sighed. How troublesome. Naruto was waiting for one of his friends to make a move, while the other two stood in front of the door. After you. Unlike his counterpart, Choji appeared comparatively excited. With a gulp, Naruto placed his hand slowly on the handle, feeling his pulse quicken. Let's get started. He yanked the door of the classroom open. Whoa, the students who had graduated a few days earlier filled the entire classroom. They were huddled in little clusters around the room. With both arms wrapped in green cloth, a boy taller than Naruto asked, what team do you think we'll end up in? A smaller boy blushed and said, I don't know, but I wouldn't mind being paired with Ino, she's pretty. The other boys around him laughed in agreement as he said, maybe, but I would not mind being on the Uchiha's team, even though he might outshine us by a mile. Similar discussions appeared to be taking place throughout the room. What would happen? Who were they going to have as teammates? Their sensei was who? However, there was tension in the classroom despite the students' laid-back demeanor. Shikamaru began with Choji in step and, with drooping eyes, said, Hey, come on Naruto, better take a seat. Conversations came to a complete stop when someone said, Come on Naruto, we'll share some chips. Everyone in the room looked at the new ninja graduate, including the Uchiha, who had been sitting in the corner, brooding in silence, but he opened his eyes to see Naruto. Well, shit, we appear to be well known. We certainly are, and with good reason. The darkness was having more fun than Naruto, as it scampered and swirled with excitement. Avoid making trouble and try to remain calm. After wiping the perspiration from his hands, Naruto started to approach a vacant seat 2 seats away from the one occupied by Uchiha Sasuke, who was sitting there watching Naruto intently. Naruto heard a variety of conversations as he passed by, and he instantly realized he was famous. Is that the guy? Naruto never heard of him. Have you? I heard this guy prevented the scroll of seals from being stolen. Really? Isn't just an ordinary guy, not a ninja. That is what I heard that thing last night. Apparently he has some rare bloodline limit. What? Yeah. Mizuki was the thief. I'm telling you, Naruto actually defeated him. No way, I was told he killed him. My father saw the incident where he lived. It was a war zone. Even though Naruto could feel eyes staring at him from all sides, he chose to ignore the commotion and simply sat quietly in his seat. The discussions went on for a few minutes. I heard he skipped the graduate exam. What? Why, that little, who the hell does he think he is? Is he planning on going to war in that get-up? Looks like a friggin' samurai. Yeah, apparently he was sworn right in after he prevented the scrolls from being taken. Unbelievable. Naruto closed his eyes and sighed. It seemed like the only conversation for a long time was about how Naruto became what he is now, as opposed to last night. This is going by swell. Yes, Naruto opened his eyes and said, so it seems that mom was right, Akamaru. Although it wasn't really necessary, it was fairly clear who it was. Naruto noticed Kiba standing in front of his desk with his little white dog perched atop his head, and he said, the freak finally steps into the light. It's tiny, Naruto thought, and he had hardly ever seen Kiba's friend Akamaru before. Usually, it runs away when Naruto gets close to it. I never imagined seeing it up close. It appears so timid, in contrast to its master. Kiba laughed at his own joke, which was obviously unfunny. What are you doing here, freak? Aren't you supposed to be chopping wood? Akamaru remained motionless, as if it was desperately holding onto Kiba's hood. Is it afraid of me? Although Naruto was always aware that the Inuzuka clan dogs disliked him, it was, to put it mildly, unsettling to watch one of them react in his presence. What do you want, Kiba? I want you to stay out of my way. You may have conned the rest of the village, even the Sandyami, but we're on to you. The third refused to lie, leaving Naruto perplexed. Who is, we, your clan? I was told that we have truce. That may be true for now, Kiba growled softly and approached the table slowly to murmur something, but once we get proof, we'll deal with you then. Whatever you say, Kiba, leave me alone. It appeared that Naruto's apathy touched a nerve. Kiba's voice shattered the silence, attracting everyone's attention. Are you dense? Playing dumb won't help you. I know what you are. So does the Aburame clan. Isn't that right, Shino? Kiba's boast was answered by a tall genin across the classroom. He wore a sea-green jacket with a high, upturned collar, dark sunglasses, and pale skin with dark bushy brown hair. Shino continued, please Kiba, don't put me in the middle of your conflicts. Kiba grinned wryly at whatever Shino was doing. Whatever, Kiba said with pride as he began to leave for his desk. Everyone was looking at the scene expectantly, as if they were hoping a fight would start. The Inuzuka clan will be watching you, Naruto. Kiba left Shino with a little splutter in their step. Naruto, stay calm. Reacting will only benefit them, so don't. This is simply delicious. Naruto felt sick to his stomach as the darkness began to enjoy this. Kiba has a delicious hatred. Why does this make you laugh so much? Do you fail to see the irony? Normal. What irony? With an air of authority reminiscent of an entertainer, the darkness spoke like the host of a game show. Kiba, who loves dogs, came down here to show off his muscles, to frighten us and demonstrate the Inuzuka clan's ability to argue, but it backfired. How did it backfire? I was definitely anxious. Naruto experienced a slight daze as the darkness overwhelmed his senses and he saw images in the darkness. Images of Sume being dismembered and hung from Konoha's tallest tower using her entrails as rope. Dogs being beheaded and their blood fed to their puppies. The kennels being burned down with fire so hot Naruto could feel it. Kiba being beaten into the dust, and the entire clan, men, women, and children, being rounded up and raped by monstrous creatures until only red ooze remained. Kiba's sole point of contention is that we ought to eliminate his clan, doing his best not to throw up. Naruto pulled the brim of his hat down further to conceal his face as he went pale. The main meeting room, which is typically used to greet delegates, is the only space in the main Konohagakure administration building that can accommodate a large crowd outside of a main clan house occasionally, though it is utilized for internal affairs, like planning chunin examinations or, in this instance, a sensei congregation to finalize the genin placements. All junins assigned to lead a 3-man genin team had to meet with the Hokage. Since the teams were finished weeks ago, it is usually a technicality, but as anyone can imagine, this was a unique situation. Since it was decided that Naruto would be a ninja, the third has been trying to decide where to place him. It took several hours, but I finally managed to get the team lists together again. But it seemed like every time he believed he had found a solution, a parent or sensei would enter and make the most colorful objections. The third was essentially the last team available, so he had to change the list 15 times in total. To his relief, he received no complaints in this instance. The third looked at all the junins in the room and said, "It is nice to see a big turnout, yet I am not surprised." The number of junins was noticeably higher than in previous years, and even those who were not assigned genin were present, which was again clear they were also paying more attention than they had previously. Kakashi was not reading one of his perverted books, and Asuma was not thinking about his next cigarette. He had little time to spare, and the rest of the village would inevitably catch on, no matter how hard he tried to hide the news of what had happened on Naruto's land and Mizuki's death. However, it is not common for a boy who shouldn't be alive to suddenly appear with abilities like the ability to call forth monsters out of thin air and tear a high-level chunin to pieces. A junin near the back seemed reluctant to speak, but he did so anyway. That group seems a little unbalanced. Naruto will only end up being a burden to the group. For the 16th time, the third was not in the mood to alter the schedule, so he said, "We will see what we will see." With a flick of his wrist, the third brought forth a puff of smoke and a crystal ball. Tomage no Jutsu. A light danced within the crystal, gradually forming the image of the graduate student's classroom. I'm hoping Naruto gets along with everyone else. With the exception of the occasional voice that broke the whisper, the room was comparatively quiet to conceal his flushed face. Naruto cocked his head forward, though the discussions shifted to more normal subjects. He could still occasionally hear the most recent Naruto origins theory being brought up. I am telling you, he must be some kind of weapon like the Jinchuriki. Well, considering we don't even know who the Kyuubi is, I suggest you shut up. You ever heard of someone spontaneously gaining powers for no reason? I haven't. The door opened once more to reveal 2 girls. Haruno Sakura, whom he knew, and an unknown girl who might be a member of the Yamanaka clan based on her long blonde hair and oddly bright blue eyes. They were having a furious argument about winning a race, which was made funnier by the fact that they were gasping for air. "It seems I beat you again, Sakura," the pallid blonde exclaimed. Sakura, in worse shape than Ino, and on the point of passing out, stammered, "Why, you wish I easily beat you, Ino?" Their vivacious Naruto grinned. "They're complete idiots. They might be people you should avoid." Naruto assumed the darkness was merely an attempt at humor because it sounded more malevolent than serious. It needed improvement. Sakura appeared to be surprised as she shifted her gaze toward Naruto and ended the argument. Naruto's reaction was nonplussed, or at least better than everyone else's. I guess a big smile appeared on her face as she got closer, and she hurried. "Is she here to say hello? It's kind of her. Perhaps this is your opportunity to ask her out. After all, I am a ninja, am I not?" Hi Sakura, nice to see. Naruto tried to greet her, but Sakura gave him a very strong shove, sending him to the ground with his head slammed against another desk. "Out of the way." Sakura's harsh tone was followed by the opposite in the following sentence. "Hello Sasuke-kun. Can I sit next to you?" Naruto thought it was amazing that someone could change their personalities so fast, despite his dizziness and rattling skull. What a bitch who lacks empathy. Naruto held his sore head in his arms. In the background, he could hear Kiba laughing, which was made even louder by a rather snarky darkness. "I would be lying if I told you, as much as I would like to say otherwise. Ha ha ha. I said so, ha 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 ha." All of the girls were gathered around the desk, chatting away, while Naruto lay there unsure of what to do. The Uchiha began pushing each other, as if the idea of being wanted was a burden. "What? Why should you sit to Sasuke-kun? I was here first." "No. I was then. Why didn't you sit next to him?" "This is unfair. I want to sit next to him." I seem to recall that ever since Sasuke joined the academy, the girls have always been that way around him. I don't hold it against him. If girls were always acting that way around me, I wouldn't want to be around them for very long. The third examined the situation, but he wasn't alone. Every other Junin was watching closely. Some were only focusing on the students that were assigned to them, but the majority were watching the events that were unfolding around Naruto. A woman with sharp red eyes asked, "So that is Naruto-kun?" She was interested in this new recruit. Asuma could not wait any longer and lit a cigarette, the smoke swirling around him with each drag. "Yeah, Kurenai-san, that's him all right." The third kept staring at the boy in the crystal ball as Kurenai inquired curiously, "What do you know about him, Hokage-sama?" "There is a lot of rumor as to who he is. Surprisingly, there is not much to say. His name is Uzumaki Naruto. Today is his 12th birthday. His mother died in childbirth and his father is unaccounted for. He is a good boy." Uzumaki, wait, isn't that the name of the main clan in Uzushiogakure? But that means? The whole room fell silent, and if someone dropped a pin, it would ring like a bell. Yes, he is probably the last of his clan. But that could mean, Kurenai simply stopped talking when the third made it sound final, saying, "That is enough, Kurenai-san." Sakura sounded triumphant about her argument, saying, "I don't care if you got here first. I made the first move so I get to sit next to him." But just as she was about to sit down, she felt a very powerful hand grab her shoulder. "What do you want, you?" Sakura was willing to fight to the death to be seated beside Sasuke, but he was confronted by Uzumaki Naruto, who had his wide brim held loosely in his other hand, rather than any of the girls. "Oh, it's you?" Sakura came off as cynical, or perhaps dismissive. "What do you want?" Naruto's tone was a little shaky, as though he wasn't sure how to phrase it, an apology for one. "What?" All of the girls were silenced by the statement, "An apology. Shoving someone out of their seat is extremely rude, not to mention painful." A few of them became apprehensive, but few others began to shy away in order to distance themselves from Naruto. Sakura slapped Naruto's hand off her shoulder and went back to the seat next to Sasuke, saying, "You're annoying, get your hands off me." Everyone, including Sasuke and Ino, stared at the rather brazen Naruto as Sakura froze and said, "You know I actually pegged you as nice, how wrong was I?" In fact, Shikamaru was awakened from a rather agreeable sleep by Choji to observe. Sakura turned and scowled at Naruto, asking, "What was that?" Naruto's voice was even and flat. It was clear that he was too angry to genuinely care whether what he was doing was right. Naruto slammed into Sakura with newfound resolve, saying, "You heard me, I thought you were nice, you're not. What is to stop me from pummeling you, Naruto? What is with that ridiculous samurai outfit?" Naruto wasn't sure if he should have said, "The same thing that stopped Mizuki from trying to kill me." Regardless of its merit, it had a special effect that caused everyone to pause and watch a heated exchange between Sakura and the recent graduate. Even though Sakura was aggressive, she was at least aware of her father's comment about a boy beating Mizuki. It was only now that she recognized the boy as Naruto. Sakura gazed at Naruto with wide eyes. "By the way," Naruto went on, "this ridiculous samurai outfit is my shinobi gear. Is Naruto a ninja now? A genin?" Sakura nearly thought the entire class would laugh, as if it were a huge joke, but nobody did. "I don't believe it. I really don't care what you believe. I just want you to apologize for booting me into a desk." Sakura appeared more concerned with sitting next to Sasuke than she did with handling the current circumstance. "Fine, I am sorry. All right?" she asked. Despite his temptation, Naruto chose not to press it further. Naruto took his original seat, which was directly next to Sakura's seat, and said, "Not as sincere as I was hoping for, but I'll take what I can get." Sakura asked in surprise, "You're not going to move?" Usually, following a confrontation like that, someone would move away. With both hands fiddling with his hat on top of his on the table, Naruto faced forward without even looking at her. "Why should I move because of an argument that you started?" he asked. Sakura's redness deepened, not out of shame, but out of rage. Sakura was about to respond harshly, but the sound of the door opening interrupted her. Iruka entered, his head held high. He appeared to be wearing a newly made uniform, and the scratches from the previous night's incident have been bandaged. It should come as no surprise that the one he wore the night before was sagging. "Okay everyone, take your seats, take your seats." The students all shuffled like sheep in search of a spot, and after they were all settled, Iruka looked around proudly and grinned when he saw Naruto's eyes. From behind him, Iruka produced a small list and said, "Welcome everyone, glad you are all here. I will now read the teams you will be put in. Team 1-inch. When Naruto mentioned Mizuki back in the Hokage's office, almost everyone in the meeting room blanched. The third even nodded to a few of the Junins to approach the academy in case things got ugly. Naruto appears to have undergone a minor personality shift. He is now more combative. Was it possible that the power reached his head? The third sighed with relief as the situation resolved itself, so it didn't matter. Everybody in the meeting room continued to gaze at the crystal ball that displayed the events taking place in front of them. The pupils either left the classroom when a list was called, or one of the Junin hurried off to pick up their new charges. Even though the majority of them were casual, Naruto was the center of attention. It seems that the question of who he was and where he came from piqued the interest of both the sensei and the students. Since the third was the only person who had known Naruto since he was a young boy, they were attempting to get his attention. Hokage-sama, can you tell us anything about Naruto? The third has actually done a fair amount of research, particularly on Naruto's only known family. I promise you this. I know just as much as you do, perhaps even less so. Uzumaki Kushima, his mother, was a well-known member of Uzushiogakure and a strong ninja with exceptional skills. Even though the two villages got along well, there had been very little interaction or awareness of the Uzumaki clan since Uzushiogakure was destroyed. They had all but vanished. The father, however, has been looking through ledgers, documents, and even contacting some sources from other villages, but to no avail. Nothing at all. The third recalled talking to Kushima and how she would always stammer and frantically change the subject when the father was brought up. She would obviously prefer to forget the father, whoever he was. I'm forced to look into it because of the devastation of Uzushiogakure and the curiosity of people like Danzo. How can I find out what Danzo knows? He will not simply hand it to me. Everyone's ears perked up, and the third himself narrowed his eyes as one of the younger Junins, a man named Jirkan, called out from the rear. I recommend that we send a scouting party to search any records in Uzushiogakure. They must have some details. In a tone that was very serious and very different from the monotone, nonchalant ninja we are familiar with, Kakashi stated, "We cannot do that, Jirkan-san." "Why not, Kakashi-senpai?" The Junin insisted, clearly not knowing the taboo and history of Uzushiogakure. Uzushiogakure has been a forbidden zone devoid of all life for nearly 12.5 years. Practically everyone who ventures there never comes back. They succumb to some sort of sickness and die. Kakashi was silent, his head lowered in reverence for the deceased. A Junin beside Jirkan whispered, as softly as he could, "I can't believe it." However, in a room full of ninjas with acute senses, he might as well have said it out loud. The whole room fell silent as Kakashi answered, "Believe it, my partner, Rin is dead because of that fiasco." Saratobi Asuma remembered the sad tale. An entire civilization was wiped out in a day. Those that survived or took appropriate safety measures such as biohazard suits either disappeared or committed suicide. It is like the entire village went insane to date. We still don't know what caused it. The third nodded and continued to provide the information. Some of the new Junin began to ask, how come we have never heard of this? A fourth ninja war nearly developed because of it. Yet no one claimed responsibility. No one was willing to fight over this. Small scouts from all nations were privately searching the area only to die or find just the dead scattered throughout the small island. The third kept staring at Naruto as he told the story. Animals, plants and human life all gone. Left where they lay unburied and unmourned. It was decided that the entire island would be sealed off. Whatever happened would not be discovered until better safety measures are in place. Until then it remains under the carefully watch of Konohagakure. However, nearly 13 years have passed and we are none the wiser. As he struggled with his book, Kakashi recalled vividly being told to go to that location just over a dozen years prior. A day he would never forget. That is why it is not safe to go there. Jirkan-san. Blanching. Jirkan retreated into the small ninja group and muttered something akin to an apology as they all kept watching the spectacle. The third bit his lip. Continuing to rattle off the list, Iruka said, Team 7. Uzumaki, Naruto, Hanero, Sakura and Uchiha Sasuke. What? Murmured Naruto. I am with Sakura. Oh no. Sakura was more overt in her objections, practically slamming her head against the desk. But Naruto maintained an open mind. She quickly changed her attitude, though, and smiled smugly at Ino, who was sitting in the row behind them. Were they wagering or something? Naruto thought. Naruto arched an eyebrow and said, Team 8. Hyuga Hinata Inazuka Kiba Aburame Shino. A Hyuga? I've only heard rumors about them, so seeing one in person is an extremely uncommon sight. Stories about the Hyuga being the great and noble clan of Konoha were legendary, but like most clans in the village, they didn't really like Naruto. They said this was because their technique didn't work on him. Naruto appeared to be a dank, empty shell because there wasn't anything like a chakra network. It was only after a thorough search that Naruto finally spotted a young girl hiding in the back row. She had fair skin, dark blue hair, and, of course, the traditional Hyuga clan trait of white eyes. Her face was framed by her chin-length hair in a Heim-cut style. She was dressed in navy blue pants and a cream-colored hooded jacket with a fire symbol on the upper right and left sleeves. Although she was extremely attractive, She had a terrible slouch and appeared to have a slight frown on her face, as if she were anxious or upset. I wonder if Hinata, who seems like a really nice person, will get along with a jerk like Kiba. Even though Naruto was relieved to be far away from the Inuzuka thug, he couldn't help but worry that Hinata would suffer. Perhaps the Aburame was there to maintain order. Regretfully, I believe we would have gotten along well. Naruto, don't feel sorry for that helpless piece of cattle, that will be your demise. Hey, having basic concerns is perfectly acceptable. Naruto, yes, there is. What's wrong with you? Do you have more than one personality? Less than a day had passed since he acquired the darkness, and already, this gift was more detrimental than helpful with each minute that went by, despite the fact that he couldn't directly control the darkness unless it so desired. Do you have the entire day? I am able to list them in either chronological or alphabetical order. Iruka continued after Naruto shook his head and the darkness laughed to himself. Team 9. Yamanaka Ino Nara Shikamaru Akamichi Choji. Oh well, I wish I could have teamed up with Choji Naruto's side. The Nara clan was also respectable, and he got along well with the Akamichi clan, who were always kind to him. Infuriatingly, the Yamanaka clan adopted a very uncaring attitude toward Naruto, largely ignoring him. Are there any questions? Iruka continued after he felt at ease with the subsequent quiet. That is the official genin list. Your Junin will come and collect you. Good luck everyone. Oh, Iruka-sensei had been gone for almost an hour. Nearly all of the genin were picked up by their respective Junin in less than 30 minutes. The newly established Team 7 were the only ones left. We're not exactly getting along, I have to admit. Throughout, Uchiha Sasuke had hardly spoken more than 2 grunts, as Naruto observed naturally, though. Hanoro Sakura remained determined to woo the silent genin. For lack of a better term, Naruto was beginning to lose his mind with anticipation during the whole waiting process. What the devil happened to our Junin? He might not be alive. In what way does that benefit us? The darkness was making rather pointless and unhelpful remarks, and Naruto was getting annoyed. You? Not very much. I'll just think it's funny. Yes, you are a sadistic, evil freak, and I understand that you don't have to prove it. Waiting was making Naruto agitated, and his teammates weren't making it any better. Sakura was beginning to hop around a little. Although Sasuke was more difficult to read, it was clear from his bone-white knuckles that he was becoming agitated. Sakura's neck snapped to Naruto, and Sasuke's expression turned to stone. All right, am I the only one who thinks this is stupid? She asked. Sakura narrowed her eyes and appeared to be considering a response as she said, we have waited well over an hour? Even though it was clear that Sakura didn't like Naruto interrupting her rather pointless attempts to get Sasuke to go on a date with her, she was inclined to agree. True. The Uchiha said nothing. Naruto honestly hoped for a response when he asked, who is our Junin? Does anyone know? But instead got an awkward silence. Wait, you guys do not know who is assigned to you? The tension of waiting was beginning to irritate Sakura, or she was just being herself, and Naruto could hardly tell the difference. Of course we don't, you idiot. Why the hell would you assume something like that? We didn't even know who we were going to be teamed up with until Iruka told us. Yeesh, Naruto took a step back. Sorry, just a question. I swear I don't know why we were partnered with you. Sakura's intelligence isn't a justification for rudeness. The fear of retaliation usually kept Naruto's anger in check. Whenever he attempted to vent his frustrations against Kiba, the bully, he was immediately put in his place with a punch to the face or a scratch to the chest. Ordinarily, Naruto would have to remain motionless and pretend nothing had occurred. Sakura gazed at the ceiling lights, which flickered quickly one after the other, the electrical wiring moaning under an unidentified pressure. What is wrong with the lights? She asked. Sasuke closely observed the blonde in the black trench coat, the clenched fists, and the extremely angry expression, while Sakura wondered if there had been an electrical surge. The Uchiha knew that the electrical surge was not a coincidence. Even though he was unsure of how it occurred, Naruto's gaze shifted from Sakura to Sasuke, and when he realized he was being watched, he relaxed his fists. The lights returned to normal as soon as they had begun. Sakura turned to see a tall, fit ninja with spiky white hair wearing a simple Konoha ninja uniform with a Chunin vest. Yo guys, what is going on? She asked. His forehead proctor, or Hite 8, was strangely positioned to cover his left eye, and a mask covered the lower portion of his face. Sasuke's eyes glared at their visibly late Junin, asking, who are you? Sakura was startled because she was still staring at the now still ceiling lights and did not hear him enter. Naruto looked at the newcomer and scratched his head, trying to think of something to say. Are you our sensei? The newly formed Team 7 slowly made their way up the stairs, but Naruto noticed that Sakura and Sasuke were avoiding him and staying as close to the sensei as possible. Yeah, sorry about that. Follow me to the roof, we'll talk there. I don't seem to be very popular with this new team of ours. Naruto knew he would be damned if he returned to chopping wood, but he was unable to come up with a strategy to deal with the newly formed Team 7. Like the rest of the academy, the rooftop served as a training ground. It served as a space for isolation and technique focus free from unneeded distractions. The area has a very zen feel to it because of the 2 rows of trees that run parallel to the Konohagakure monument. Normally, there were a lot of students training there, but in this instance, there was just 1 Junin and 3 Genin. The 3 Genin were seated on the stairs, their Junin casually resting against the railing. Sasuke took the middle seat, Sakura took the far right seat, and Naruto took the left seat at the small gathering. Sasuke and their Junin were aware of the distance between Sakura and Naruto. Since Sakura and Naruto are already at odds, Kakashi reasoned that this would be more difficult than he had anticipated. Well, since we're all here, I think it is best that you all introduce yourselves. Naruto didn't know what team formations did when they were assigned, but it sounded like standard procedure. Introduce ourselves. Tell us your name, your ambitions, what you like and what you hate, stuff like that. Sensei? Sakura's eyes darted from the Junin to Sasuke with a very apprehensive expression. Shouldn't you tell us who you are? Me? The Junin asked, looking a little taken aback. My name is Hitaki Kakashi. I have no intention of telling you about what I like and dislike. As to ambitions, I have lots of hobbies. Sakura's whisper was more aimed at Sasuke than Naruto, but the new Genin still nodded his head. So all we have learned is his name. Fantastic. Sakura seemed to feel happier when Kakashi nodded at her and said, now it's your turn, you first. Sakura's face flushed bright red as she said, I'm Hanoro Sakura. I like, well, the person I like is... Her green eyes kept darting to Sasuke and back to the ground. Sakura squealed with delight at the obvious prospect of being Sasuke's girlfriend, adding, and my hobby as well. My dream is to... Sasuke simply maintained his composure, while Naruto simply rolled his eyes. It makes sense that my host would be stranded with the oddballs. The darkness would have performed a face palm or rolled its eyes if it were a human. Naruto dismissed the sarcastic thought. And what do you hate? Sakura's voice was harsh and acrid as she said, Naruto annoys me. That resolves that. Sakura must leave its best to make it seem like an accident because they'll blame you if she seems to have been murdered or simply vanishes. She won't be killed by us. All I have to do is request a transfer. Naruto expected a little more subtlety, but he could hardly say that he was shocked. Peeved. Whatever, don't come to me in tears when she turns into a liability, though. With the exception of a fleeting glance at Naruto, Kakashi's right eye, the only exposed portion of his face, showed no emotion in response to what he had just heard. Not really enough detail. Sakura, care to try again? What? Sakura asked, looking a little angry. What about you? You did not really give us much to go on either, Kakashi-sensei. It was safe to assume that Kakashi was grinning beneath his mask based on the way he smiled. You'll get to know me along the way. Besides Sakura, who is in charge of this team? Sakura's eyes shot to the ground as her face turned a very deep shade of red. You? Muttered Sakura. Exactly, Kakashi exclaimed in a calm, level voice. So how about you try again before I pull rank? Cool. The familiar flush returned to Sakura's cheeks as she said, okay, I like very cool drinks and the outdoors, but I really hated when... Sakura rubbed her forehead gently and said, when people call me Forehead-chan, and when it comes to ambitions and dreams, I wish to defeat and surpass Yamanaka Ino in all aspects. With her most recent response, Kakashi appeared more content. Much better. That wasn't so hard now, was it? Kakashi turned to look at Sasuke. Your turn. My name is Uchiha Sasuke. The stoic ninja appeared to think carefully about what he was going to say, and Kakashi could see that he was repeating himself. I don't like many things, but I do have a fondness for meat dishes. I like. Check that. I need to get stronger and learn new techniques. Anything that can be taught or learned to help me achieve my goal. Despite his best efforts to keep it lighthearted, Kakashi knew what Sasuke would say when he asked, what is your goal? Perhaps I shouldn't have inquired. Sasuke's eyes had a grim resolve as he said, the death of the man who murdered my family and the revival of my clan. The group fell silent as Sasuke made the vow, I will go anywhere, do anything, and make promises to anyone that can help me achieve that. I hate to tell you, Naruto, but I think the emo guy may overtake you as my favorite. Quit talking, please. He is really intense for a statue for Naruto. A shiver ran up his back. Kakashi-sensei closed his eyes, and Naruto could swear he had a somber expression on his face when he opened them again at last. Kakashi's gaze shifted to the final member of Team 7. Kakashi's entire spiel about being more specific in their introductions seemed to Naruto to be a smokescreen. Well, it's your turn. Naruto's tongue loosening was the true goal. Do not mention this to them in anything you do. Naruto, like a drunkard, the darkness hammered Naruto's skull. Why? You appear to be more than at ease revealing yourself. People aren't searching for us at that time. Answers are being sought after by your sensei. Recall that ships sink due to loose lips. After considering it for a few seconds, Naruto thought of something to say. My name is Uzumaki Naruto, and I am sort of new to this whole ninja thing. Sakura had nearly exhausted Naruto's patience. I'll say, you didn't even have to take the basic ninja exam, he said. Hey! Yelled Naruto. Why don't you go to? The impasse was swiftly broken by their new leader. Sakura, be quiet, everyone gets a turn. Naruto, please continue. Let's get this over with, please. Naruto rushed through his introduction as much as he could. I like ramen, different kinds and flavors. What I hate, I really don't like the waiting period between cooking and eating ramen. I used to hate my old job, but that is no longer an issue. Who I hate, on the other hand. A brief memory of Kiba popped into his head. That's another story. As for ambitions, well, I would prefer not to go back to what I was. Kakashi inquired, and what were you before? A woodchopper and target for the more radical elements in the village. Naruto realized that saying something like that was a bit cliché, but he will do the same if his teammates are skirting the issue. Conversely, Kakashi stiffened slightly, clearly anticipating something a bit more revealing. Kakashi appeared uninterested, but the slight narrowing of his eyes was a dead giveaway. Well, that was good, Naruto. Well, team, I have to say you are easily the most complex group of personalities I have encountered, but unfortunately it's not over yet. What do you mean? Asked Sakura. I mean survival training. Survival training? Naruto asked, unable to believe it. What is survival training? A test to see how well you cope under pressure and how well you can survive in combat. Sakura appeared truly upset at this revelation, asking, wait, a test? Combat? What is this, Kakashi-sensei? I thought we did not have any more tests. You thought wrong. Those tests were just to determine whether or not you have the potential as Genin. The real tests begin now with a fail rate of 66%. By the time he realized it, Naruto had already blurted out his thoughts, saying, that sounds made up. Naruto wished he could shrink to the size of an atom and be taken away after seeing the looks he received from all three of his co-workers. Sorry. Really, Naruto? How long have you been, and I put this in the vaguest terms, a ninja? A day? Less than a day. Actually, you should learn to respect your superiors now. You may have been given a free pass up to this stage, but you will receive no lenience from me. Got that? Kakashi continued to speak. As I was saying, this little test is to determine how you survive in combat situations. With an authoritative tone, Sasuke asked, what is the criterion for this test? Let's get right to the point. Naruto tried to hide his smile. Kakashi brushed some dirt off his pant leg and said, we can talk about that tomorrow. Meet me in training ground 3 at 6 o'clock, and don't eat anything, you will throw up if you do. Dismissed. With his hands in his pockets and the pink-haired girl swooning after him like a lost puppy, the Uchiha got up and walked away without saying anything. When Naruto saw the scene in front of him, he couldn't help but sigh, but now was the moment to inquire about the transfer with Kakashi. He walked over to the Junin, who was looking boredly out over the vista. What's up, Naruto? Kakashi slowly turned to face the boy in front of him, his eyes narrowed, and he asked, Kakashi-sensei, is it possible to get a transfer to another team? Their sensei asked in a silky silver voice. Why? It was hard for Naruto to accept that a Konohagakure Junin could be as dense as Kakashi claimed. One of the most effective ways to lower the defenses of people around you is to pretend to be foolish. Well, it is apparent that Sakura does not care for me, my feelings or my position on this team, and I am pretty sure Sasuke is indifferent. Neither want me on this team, and I can assure you the feeling is mutual. A transfer seems like the easiest method to resolve this problem. Instead of the slightly droopy eye he's had since they first met, Kakashi looked at the blonde with a critical eye. It was impossible for Naruto to understand his thoughts. Kakashi folded his arms and leaned against the rail, saying, Naruto, let me be frank. Your sudden leap into the ninja world has caused quite a stir in Konohagakure. You are, for lack of a better term, the flavor of the month. But the tone of Kakashi's voice became more severe as he said, let me finish. I know it is difficult to understand, especially considering this is not your fault in the end. You are not like everyone else. You are not an average person, and whatever you were previously, you are certainly not helpless. Kakashi's gaze widened. I read the report and saw the aftermath. I know what happened to Mizuki. That was not my fault. Naruto didn't need his sensei to be named among those opposed to him. That was. I said I know that was not your fault, Naruto. Believe me, I know. He tells lies. Don't pay attention to him. The voice that whispered to Naruto was shaken out. Kakashi put a hand on the blonde's shoulder and said, "However, not everyone has kept an open mind. A lot of people are sacred of you. That is the sad truth, but nevertheless it is the truth. Parents do not want you to be partnered with their children, nor do they want you taught in the academy. This was the only place we could fit you." With disappointment, Naruto lowered his head. How did I get myself into this situation? Kakashi didn't need to explain when he said, "You can call me a liar if you want. I would be more than happy to let you take this up with the third. I promise I won't hold any grudge. Bottom line, you have only one place left to go, and that is back to what you did before you became a genin." With no future, chopping wood. After giving it some thought, Naruto realized he had no other option. As Sakura pointed out, you did not even have to take the entrance exam, but we know that taking down Mizuki is no small feat. If anything, you should be a chunin. Kakashi cracked a chuckle. So don't sell yourself short, you have unlimited potential. I agree for once. Besides, part of being a genin is learning about trusting and working with other people, especially people you don't like them. So how about you give this another shot before you start thinking about leaving the team? Okay. Despite his inability to articulate it, he felt somewhat more at ease with the odd Junin. I'll see you tomorrow. Don't forget 6 a.m., training ground 3. Oh, Naruto said as he descended the dark stairwell. Well, that was relatively painless. Naruto turned to see Frutz sitting on the guard rail, staring at him with a puzzled expression on his face. I'll say. Beside the stairs above and below their present level, 2 darklings appeared. What are you doing here? I thought you couldn't manifest during the day. Frutz pointed to their surroundings and said, we can handle a dimly lit stairwell. We cannot manifest in light, especially natural and strong bright light. Frutz waved a hand, saying, if someone walks in, the game is up. Naruto stopped to consider what had happened today and said, nobody is going to come in, boss, relax. Naruto asked, so what do I do now? Now? Frutz's toothy grin literally extended from ear to ear. Well, you're the boss. Boss, what do you want to do? Naruto muttered to himself, I don't know anything about being a ninja, unless that amounted to me chopping wood. I am not so sure about this team though, you. Frutz gave an indifferent shrug. We are only sure about what you are sure about, boss. At the young darkling's answer, Naruto scowled, so what do you think I should do? Frutz was picking at his teeth as if he was looking for something, and he said, we will do what you want us to do, boss. You're not being very helpful, boss. We would be happy to turn anyone who stood in your way into a goon kebab for you. However, you are in charge of the major choices. When most children require at least 5 years of training, I was promoted in a single day by competent experts, at the very least. In the end, especially during the day, I can't just rely on you guys. I need a crash course in being a ninja, Frutz said, nodding in understanding. One of the darklings yelled, not bad, boss. And this survival training that Kakashi-sensei was talking about, something does not add up. I'll be honest, I've never heard of a test like this. What will you do, then? Boys, we are going to the library, Naruto said, as a long list of questions and answers raced through his head. It's time to start studying. Being the main research and record-keeping facility in the village and one of the more famous libraries in the Fire Country, the Konohagakure Public Records Center has a certain exclusivity about it because of the nature of the village and the library's contents. To enter, you must be a practicing shinobi from Konohagakure, or if you are from a foreign ninja, you must have an authorized signature from the Hokage's office. Unless you were a Konohagakure shinobi of at least rank Shunin, borrowing was strictly prohibited. Entering and exiting the Konohagakure Public Records Center is a laborious process that involves being tagged, logged, and searched. Once you are inside, you will find a wealth of information, including medical research, art, novels, case law, and even the histories of famous battles that date back to the early days of the 5 great nations and beyond. It is a library in a village full of ninja, so it has more than just books and research. It also has techniques that have been documented since the village's founding, specialized books on tactics, sealing technique blueprints, and the Shodai Hokage's Scroll of Seals, one of the more uncommon artifacts in the labyrinth. But when Uzumaki Naruto entered, he wasn't searching for methods. Instead, he was looking for information, particularly past tests and exams, and more crucially, a profile of his new sensei. Hitaki Kakashi. Naruto was happy to just study the main lobby, but all he got were odd looks, some curious, as people wondered how a civilian got into the library, while others were worried, probably because they had heard about the incident in the hills close to his home. Naruto ordered a private room and filled his small private study with books, scrolls, and other tomes. He threw about 20 books on the floor without a fuss and then started working, but not before turning out the lights. He could clearly see multiple darklings emerging from the shadows as his eyes adapted to the darkness. So, boss, What the fuck is going on? A darkling discovered a book thrown at its head. We need to get this done, Naruto said sheepishly, apologizing. Achieve what you need to do. As it picked up a book nearby, another darkling asked, make paper aeroplanes. No, Naruto sat down at the desk in the middle of the study and said, I have to find out before tomorrow what kind of test Kakashi-sensei is going to give us and I require your. You want us to study? Wait, really? The darklings gazed at one another in shock. Hey, how long has it been since we read anything? Well, that cookbook was published 20 years ago. Our goal was to figure out how to cook the liver of some idiot to perfection. Huh. Those were wonderful times, man. Naruto broke the inevitable chain of insults and prattle that would have likely led to his expulsion from the center by saying, listen guys, enough of this. Frutz appeared behind the small group of darklings and took command immediately, saying, fine, no need to be uptight about it, boss. Okay boys, you heard the boss, grab a book and get to reading. Zero. What does Ismula oblongata mean, Dren? A darkling by the name of Xran inquired. His brow furrowed in a manner reminiscent of folds in a blanket as he gazed at the page in front of him. A rather diminutive darkling, resembling the archetypal smart guy, with thick glasses and pens in his breast pocket, came up to Xran and gazed at the word Xran was asking. Xran appeared more perplexed than before the explanation, but Dren sighed and added, the word Iasamidala oblongata, and it is the primal center of the back cortex. It is that bit near the spinal cord. You know, the one that tastes strangely like shish kebab. Ah, of course. What do you read? Academy Initiation Standard Level 1" was the title of the book Naruto looked up from. It is called Basic Anatomy Test, Academy Entrant. The Junin list, which listed the names and basic information of every Junin operating in Konohagakure, was being searched by a rather large darkling that huddled itself in the study's corner. The darkling's hands were so large that it was difficult to hold its research in its fingers, let alone its hands. Well, I have plowed through this book twice and there is no mention of this Hitaki Kakashi. What? Disbelieving, Xran approached the enormous darkling and grabbed the book out of its enormous grasp, saying, gimme that, you must have missed it. As Xran swiftly perused each page, the giant darkling objected, saying, hey Xran, don't give me your crap. See here, it is I can understand why you missed it, it is barely 2 lines long, Xran replied. It just says he passed the Genin exam a little under 14 years ago. After that it is just blank. Nothing after Genin, huh? Naruto recalled the blue-eyed darkling, Goldbrick, from last night, and everyone turned to face him. I remember something similar in Iwakugure, he said. That typically indicates that Anbu seized him. Dren readjusted his glasses and said, I agree, it is a default tack. Goldbrick spat, shut up, nerd. Naruto sighed in disappointment, wondering how he would learn about the test if he had no knowledge of his sensei. Is his teacher there? Naruto asked, the one that took care of him when he was Genin. Xran looked back into the book and said, it does actually. It was whoa. A huge shot, but that is blatant favoritism. Who? What's the matter? Check this, boss, and you are not going to believe it, but he was taught by his own father Hitaki Sakumo aka White Fang, but you would better know him as the fucking Yondaime Hokage. The Yondaime, who was willing to sacrifice the mission for his men and who single-handedly defeated the Kyuubi no Yoko, albeit admittedly at the expense of his own life, could cut through hundreds of opponents to reach one target, and Naruto raised his eyebrows in surprise. The Hokage and his sensei were his father, right? Although he could be related to anyone because of the mask covering his face, I did not notice the resemblance. Oh please, I suppose if the man's father had a reputation like that, I would be ashamed if I could never live up to it, Frutz laughed. At least we are making progress. What is the Yondaime mentioned in the book? Goldbrick did the snake equivalent of pacing, slithering slowly around the room. Born whenever, blah blah blah, victory at the Devil's Bridge blah blah yada yada yada. Oh wait. Trained by Sarutobi Hiruzen, Sandaime Hokage. Wait, Hiruzen is the old man's name? Well, you learn something new every day? Naruto felt embarrassed by his ignorance and had never considered asking the name of the man who had raised him for the majority of his life. Pay attention, boss. In a monotone, Xran recited passages from the book. What have we got here? Ah, here we go. Sarutobi Hiruzen was trained by the Shodaime and Nidaime Hokages, respectively, well known for who the fuck cares. And awe with that, Xran closed the book and threw it to the ground in triumph, grunting and thrusting his pelvis into the air. The Sandaime has made several contributions to education, in particular he created the Bell test. You make a valid point, but how can we be sure he would apply that test? Nothing, Dren pondered, but what could ensure that he wouldn't employ that test? In addition, I find this Kakashi to be unimaginative. He's not going to put much effort into coming up with something unique. It's the bell test. When they finally made progress, Naruto exhaled with relief and said, "Point, so, does anyone know anything about this bell test?" The Darklings shook their heads negatively as they swiftly flipped through the books on the floor and table, looking at the indexes and book titles. "Not in this place. I'll see if there's a spare book on training methods that I missed." Frutz grinned eerily and said, "Do that, boss. We'll wait right here." Naruto went to the door, and as soon as he opened it, the light from the opposite side of the room blinded him, and the Darklings immediately ducked behind the table or leapt onto the ceiling. "Sorry guys. Oh, and by the by," Naruto said. "Yes, boss?" Frutz's voice was quiet as she spoke. "Thanks for everything." Naruto hurriedly closed the door behind him because he thought he might blush. Dren shot Frutz a sour glance as the Darklings regrouped and waited for their master. "Why did you lie to the boss, Frutz? You have the book in your palm." Dren gestures accusingly at Frutz's hand, which he concealed behind his back to hide it. Frutz kept gritting his teeth while nodding to a Darkling nearby, who hurried to the door and looked beneath it for any indication that someone might be approaching the study. "A few of the Darklings here wanted to express their concerns to the boss in private, Goldbrick, isn't that correct?" Goldbrick steamed, "Fuck yes, I have concerns. What's wrong with this spoiled child?" At their master's disparaging name-calling, a few of the Darklings shuffled uneasily but said nothing. "Oh, don't act like I'm the only one who is concerned. What does Naruto do with the power of the darkness that he has been given? Books. And more importantly, what is this fear of killing?" Goldbrick said, tapping one of the books on the desk. "Granted, we are not arguing with much vigor, but that's because his predecessors didn't require much prodding in that direction." "I don't know about you guys, but I need killing," said the large Darkling, who grunted in agreement as a few of the others nodded around the room. "As you are aware, I am skilled at killing, and I absolutely love it. Same as all of you, even you Dren, even though you're a nerd." Dren snorted at the remark, shifting his glasses once more, but he did not dispute it. "Do I need to remind you guys that our purpose was to kill? How many people did we kill on the first day with Naruto's predecessor, Xran? What? Does 167 sound correct?" Goldbrick became enraged. "Yeah." Xran nodded. "And his predecessor's first day was about 82 and the predecessor before that was 90. We get it, we're having a slow day. But Goldbrick, watch out, this discussion is turning into something treasonous." Another Darkling added, "You know what happens to those who stand against the boss." Goldbrick waved his hands in the air and pointed to our surroundings, saying, "I am not standing against him, but I am wondering where it all went wrong. We had such a good thing going and now this idiot comes in and screws it up." Every creature in the room turned to gaze at the objector, the green-eyed Frutz, and said, "That's enough, Goldbrick. Anyone else?" The giant Darkling in the corner spoke up, saying, "The boss said, thank you. No predecessor has ever said thank you to us. Never." The Darklings muttered in agreement that the previous leaders were all, for want of a better term, mean little shits. Then Naruto arrived with manners, etiquette, and a restraint that the Darklings had never seen in a Darkness inheritor. To be honest, it was unnerving, but who could blame them? Who didn't enjoy killing people in the most casual way possible and maiming small children? We are Darklings, masters of the shadows and the manifestation of children's nightmares. In case you have forgotten, look at us. We sound like whining children. Frutz said it is our responsibility to protect and preserve the Darkness inheritor, to help him develop into a being of unadulterated power or anything else he may want, not to speculate or ask questions. However, what about our power and strength? Naruto is really lacking in his ability to fuel our strength. Dren asked if he is unable to assist us, how can we assist him? Frutz laughed to himself, but need we forget that we were always weak at the beginning? We get our power from the inheritor's intelligence, bloodthirst, and imagination, so we are not as strong now as we would like. Now, I do agree with you, Goldbrick, that the boss is indeed an outlier in comparison to his predecessors, but that is not our concern, Frutz said, surveying the Darklings in the room who were listening intently to everything he said, including Goldbrick, who was listening grudgingly. "Do I need to remind you that Naruto's power as the boss is unquestionable? The darkness itself is the only thing that can overcome that. The darkness does not have to, nor does it need to share its plans with us or the boss, and will not interfere unless absolutely necessary," Frutz added. "And while the boss does have authority over his own destiny, the darkness has the power to pull rank, if required." The Darklings were aware of the darkness and its uncompromising principles regarding carnage. "So, what should we do?" Then Goldbrick asked. Frutz's emerald eyes squinted at the Darkling with the blue eyes. "Goldbrick, "You disgusting excuse of a gelatinous bucket of sick," Frutz said. "We will do as the boss says and we will keep him safe until the very end unless a new inheritor takes over or the darkness itself takes over. We will keep doing this. I need your assistance because if any of you maggots bring up this topic again, you will be requisitioned back to darkness." Requisition was an unpleasant way of saying you will have to return to the darkness itself. It was the worst fate imaginable for anything and anyone, and it is the only thing that would effectively kill darklings. The demonic creatures had seen and done horrible things in their existence, and they feared nothing and no one except the very thing that created them, which had seen, done, and created even more horrible things. The darklings shuddered, and even Frutz frowned when he said it. In a panic, the darkling by the door said, "Hey guys. Someone, the boss, is on the way. Now is the time for you to finish it." "Well, that's it," Frutz said with a firm no. "I don't want this matter to be brought up again. In addition, I must say that, after serving darkness inheritors for almost 6,000 years alongside the rest of you, I truly appreciate the change of pace this boss will provide. It differs from what we are accustomed to, if anything." With a frown on his face, Naruto hurried in and closed the door behind him as darklings heard the click of the doorknob turning and huddled around the room to avoid being struck by the light outside. "Hey guys, I checked and we took all the books regarding training and educational methods that have not been checked out." "Well boss," Frutz said with a cough, "this one fell behind the desk and we found it while you were out." After taking the book from the small green-eyed creature, Naruto's frown loosened, and he glanced at the cover title, Genin Training Tactics, for a moment before rushing through the index and finding what he was looking for. "Well, boss, what does it say?" "The Bell Test is a teamwork test that is disguised as a survival training exercise. The managing sensei has the final say over the type of training exercise. The Bell Test is designed to create internal conflict within a Genin team while also encouraging a sense of teamwork and camaraderie by putting them up against a challenge or common enemy, typically played by the sensei. A minimum of 2 individuals are needed for the Bell Test to work, but 3 participants are necessary for optimal efficacy. The sensei must have an equal number of bells minus at least 1 bell, regardless of the number of participants. In order to foster the nature of the internal conflict, the sensei must specify that the failure to obtain a bell will result in a form of consequence. Again, the nature of the consequence is left to the sensei's discretion. However, it is normally a form of humiliation, failure or physical discomfort or all of the above. The main principle behind the test is to force Genin in working together despite a guarantee of at least one person not succeeding in the mission. If teamwork is used, then the purpose of the Bell Test has been satisfied regardless of whether the bells have been retrieved by the sensei. If teamwork is not used, then the purpose of the Bell Test is not satisfied and the participants of the exam fail, regardless of whether the bells have been retrieved by the Genin. One of the darklings mocked, "Well, so this Bell Test is an exercise in working together, huh? The sensei is the enemy in this test?" X-Ran appeared enraged. "Wait, that means you have to work with the Uchiha? That Sakura girl too?" he asked. Goldbrick gave Naruto a shoulder pat and said, "I hate to tell you, boss, but it's awful to be you right now. Sasuke is not the type to ask for or accept help. Sakura, perhaps if the stars aligned and the Hokage gave the order, Naruto would scowl. They won't question us if they see this book." Naruto tapped the book he was holding. "Us?" Naruto's eyes narrowed as he said, "I can't very well do this by myself. Hate to break it to you, boss, but this test is going to be done during the day. We can't help you in daylight." Naruto looked at the darklings, who appeared just as worried as he did, if not more so. "But how am I going to do this test without your help?" The darklings dislike it when their masters fight by themselves, especially if their master was just crowned, but they were left with little option. Slowly and deliberately, Dren said, "Until then, you will have to rely on these new teammates of yours. We will support you if we can." Answering the fundamental question that has pervaded the darklings for ages, how can they assist the boss during the day, is never simple. Frutz swiftly crawled along the desk and removed the book from Naruto's grasp, saying, "Back to that issue of them believing you." Frutz reached for Naruto's pocket and threw the book in, saying, "That will be taken care of." There was a momentary wait in Naruto's pocket, but it quickly disappeared into thin air. "Just like the kunai, isn't this stealing?" With a cheeky grin, Frutz said, "Right, you are boss, so, don't tell anyone. Now let us get out of here before I think Dren the nerd is starting to enjoy it here." Dren angrily said, "Hey, shut up, Frutz." Zero the Chunin at the library were unaware of Naruto's departure. Despite his uneasy suspicion that he would be apprehended, he saw that the sky had turned from blue to a deep orange color, which he identified as dusk. Thus, several hours had passed. Time has gone by so quickly, wow. Naruto began the journey back to his hilltop home with the words, "It's almost nighttime." Naruto observed an odd lack of people as he strolled through the village's streets even though most businesses were closing. Konohagakure had a pretty active nightlife. In fact, from his hilltop home, he could frequently see the commotion of people. It must have been their third date, but there weren't many people out. He turned down one of the streets and saw a young couple in their 20s swooning over one another. The boyfriend, dressed in chunin, looked directly at Naruto, and for a moment, he saw something. Not trepidation, but a glimmer of concern. And dare Naruto guess it, fear? That is unexpected. The villagers didn't feel fear toward him. They might have been contemptuous and curious, but not afraid. Ultimately, Naruto lacked any skills or abilities, so unless you asked the Inuzuka, he wasn't a threat. When the Mizuki fiasco occurred, everyone went crazy. With the exception of Inuzuka, the villagers were dickish but neither vindictive nor cruel. Instead, they would simply rather avoid Naruto. Naruto had to approach the situation. Practically the majority of the Akamichi clan, Iruka, Mimiki, and the Sandaime, whom Naruto now knew as Hiruzen, were exceptionally kind and decent to him, though, so there were some exceptions to the rule. Hey Naruto. Naruto grinned as he turned to see Iruka and Mimiki strolling down a side street at the other end. Let's talk about the devil. The saying made the darkness giddy, but he said nothing. Mimiki Iruka. Naruto's smile faded when he noticed the scratches on Iruka's face. He was wearing a new chunin jacket, of which Naruto remembered that it was hanging by the seams. Mimiki chirped, "Great seeing you, Naruto." Naruto was taken aback to see her wearing more social clothing instead of her medical coat, as he had recently concluded that she practically lived in the damn thing. "Nice seeing you too." Mimiki was pleasant to see, but Naruto was saddened to see Iruka still afflicted with wounds he caused. Since Iruka had been so kind to him, Naruto hoped that he wouldn't be shocked if he thought less of him. Iruka smiled freely and naturally as she asked, "Well Naruto, so are you ready?" Naruto's forehead wrinkled inward. "Ready? For what?" It was still October 10th, and Naruto blinked in surprise as he said, "Well, I did say to take you out to ramen, and it is your birthday. What a day." But Mimiki walked next to Naruto, put her hands on his shoulders, and led him to Ichikaru Ramen, his most predictable favorite ramen shop. "No, but Naruto, it is our treat." Iruka and Mimiki ate tonkatsu ramen, while Naruto ordered miso ramen with all the toppings. There was nothing better for Naruto than to celebrate the occasion with Iruka and Mimiki, and it was a pleasant occasion. It would have been ideal if the Sandaime had been included. Naruto couldn't resist stealing glances at Iruka while he ate his ramen, the tiny bandages covering the new cuts on his face. "Hey Iruka, I just wanted to apologize about what happened last night. I hope you..." Iruka gave Naruto a comforting pat on the back and said, "Hey Naruto, I'm fine." Seriously, Iruka scowled as he said, "I should be apologizing to you. I should have known that Mizuki was rotten. Mizuki was a good friend, but he ultimately proved to be treacherous." Perhaps Iruka did not want to see his comrade's true nature, or perhaps he had pulled the wool over everyone's eyes. Any veteran will tell you that being a ninja is a lonely endeavor. Naruto couldn't remember ever seeing Mimiki and him together, so he asked, "So how did you and Mimiki meet?" "He came in with the injuries. I was the one who dressed him up." Mimiki grinned casually. Iruka blushed a little and smiled nervously, saying, "I never did. Thank you for that." Naruto smirked as he looked between the two. He didn't need to be intelligent to see where this was headed. When Iruka began to choke on the ramen noodles, Naruto chuckled and asked, "So are you going to take her out on a date?" Tucci, the proprietor of the store, had to get him a glass of water because things had gotten so bad. "What?" Iruka's face was flushed, but only she knew if it was from embarrassment or from almost choking to death in the corner. Naruto could hear Mimiki laughing. Mimiki's face was beginning to heat up, but she kept her cool enough to smile. "I didn't mean to pry. Just asking. You seem to like each other well enough. Right Mimiki?" Mimiki gave Naruto a light smack across the head. "And you think she is pretty, don't you Iruka?" Iruka gave Naruto a slap across the head that was noticeably harder. "Naruto, why you eat your ramen?" Iruka used his chopsticks to slowly stir the bowl as Tucci entered the kitchen to avoid interfering with his favorite client's attempt at matchmaking. He couldn't help but snicker. While giving Naruto a rather puzzled smile, Mimiki gave Iruka a simple pat on the back and said, "We should do this more often." Good times. Zero Inuzuka Sume detested secrecy and politics. She disliked being on the council and having to control her speech in front of people who clearly annoyed her. She simply enjoyed the straightforward life of a Junin. Go on missions, finish them, battle those who must be fought, and then return home. Nevertheless, as they say, when in Konoha, when she was by herself, away from her family and clan, she couldn't help but think that being Alpha's proctor was a bad idea. However, she was compelled to take this role, and she couldn't leave now, not when the clan needed her most. Well beyond the city limits, Sume strolled along the damp forest floor. The person she was meeting was unpredictable enough that it would be risky to keep him waiting any longer, and she was running late though she couldn't afford to have her companion with her. Sume wished she could do this in the Inuzuka main clan house with Kuromaru by her side, not this evening. She waited for her contact at the agreed-upon meeting location. He was already there and growing restless, just as she had suspected at the base of a tree. Sume's contact was crouched in the shadows, squatting on all fours like a dog. The shadow's deep voice sounded groggy and sickly as he whispered, Well, I was beginning to think you weren't gonna show. Sume-san almost tempted to visit you at home. When Sume smelled the strong coffee and pepper coming from the shadow, her face was pruned. You wouldn't get within 100 meters of the main house and you know it. Maybe. The figure was beginning to emerge from the darkness. The figure froze and said, Don't, with venom in her voice. Sume snarled, Stay where you are, I don't want to be seen with you. Regressing back into the shadow, the figure asked, Really? Then why did you call me? I must admit I was surprised when I got your message. Never have I run so fast at someone's beckoning. Figures, but I did not bring you back to reminisce. Fearful of being touched, Sume took a small photograph out of her pocket and threw it at the creature. I want you to tail him. With a sort of twisted pleasure, the figure picked up the picture and sniffed Sume's scent on it, making the Alpha's Proctor skin crawl. A recon mission? Who is the blonde? Uzumaki Naruto. He is a source of concern for our clan. We need him to be watched, but he has allies on the council. So you use someone that cannot be connected to the clan. Gotcha. How do I find him? You can't miss him, just follow the scent of death. The figure put the photo in his pocket and said, I do miss that smell. So what is in this for me? With a toothy snarl on her face, Sume crossed her arms and said, You get to live. The shadow just laughed. The figure stood up straight, revealing a humanoid form a good foot taller than Sume, saying, I have lived long enough now, I want more. How is your daughter? Hana, is it? I hear she is very ripe. When the figure mentioned her only daughter, Sume did not even realize she had already drawn a kunai. You will not touch her, scum. If I see you within 10 miles of her you will beg for death. Maybe. The figure seemed unconcerned about the female Inuzuka, who was furious, but you did not answer my question. How is she? What do you want? Sume asked, her knuckles whitened as she held her kunai ever so tightly. Sume felt a shiver run down her spine as the figure appeared to be chanting rather than speaking. Legacy, home legacy. Perhaps this was a bad idea. Finally, Sume pocketed the blade in one hand and tossed a bunch of documents and travel passports in the other, saying, We'll see. This will allow you to get through the city without any trouble. A toothy smile emerged from the shadows. That's it? I am surprised, Sume-san. I thought you would try to kick my ass through this forest first. Rex would be most displeased. Is the job of Alpha's Proctor wearing you down? Maybe a new Alpha should take up the title. Sume made herself smile, but it appeared to be more of a sign of extreme discomfort. You have no right to say his name. Besides, if I kill you now, the clan will suspect something when they smell your blood on my hands. Now if you'll excuse me, I have to go have a shower. It appalls me to be near you, even more so than Naruto. The shadow was trembling and giddy with anticipation. Ooh, can I watch? Sume did not even look back, but she clenched her fist so tightly that her knuckles turned white, refusing to release it until she was safely inside the village. You're mad, you know that? She asked. The figure complained, so they keep telling me. 01 of the Darklings opened Naruto's small shack and said, Home sweet home, boss. Even though Naruto was exhausted, he could feel a number of claws supporting him as he moved through his home. As Naruto made his way through the kitchen to fetch a glass of water, we soon noticed a refreshing breeze coming from his bedroom behind him. He looked over his shoulder and recalled what had happened the night before. Ah, damn. The hole the Darklings created when they took him outside. In retrospect, he was unable to remember why he had forgotten it until now. One side of the house was completely blasted out, and a good quarter of the roof was gone. Now that Naruto has to fix it, no handyman will take the job because of what has happened, damn it. One of the Darklings signaled to the others, who hurried out. Ah, boss, relax, relax, now don't you go worrying about something as stupid as a missing wall. Have a shower and get ready for bed. WE will handle that. Naruto appeared doubtful, but he refrained from arguing with his friends. Okay. He went slowly to the shower, and when he came back, he saw that the roof and walls had just been boarded up, and that a number of Darklings had been painting the walls. How? The Darklings turned to look at a speechless blonde with eyes the size of dinner plates and a slightly open mouth. He was aware that changing and taking a shower took at least 10 minutes, but the Darklings managed to get at least several hours of work done in that time. Tricks of the trade, boss. The Darklings dragged their somewhat stunned master to the bed, saying, But That's impossible, that cannot be. A few of the Darklings picked Naruto up off the ground and laid him gently beneath his bed's sheets, saying, "Okay boss, upsy daisy." Naruto could hardly believe it when the Darklings carried him as if he were as light as a feather, barely reaching his waist. "You got a very busy day ahead of you, boss." "Okay, but I have to set my alarm for 5:30 and I have to." A Darkling yelled from the ceiling, "It's already done, boss." Naruto paused to gaze at the odd creature, which appeared to be a hybrid of a giraffe and a typical Darkling. He might have also questioned why the Darkling on the ceiling appeared so strange if it had happened earlier, but the Darkling's form was the most conservative given his current company. Slowly but surely the Darklings began to disappear once more into the darkness as they had come on some level. Naruto felt more at ease with them in a single day than he did with the villagers for 12 years. If it had been anyone else, the demonic creatures would have likely sent them screaming out the door. The words, "Been a pretty good day," were spoken as Naruto rested his head on his pillow. "You said it, boss." Zero Danzo had placed a book flat on the table and was reading it while drinking his jasmine tea. Danzo liked to read a good book at night, but this was no easy tale. Instead, this was a treasured item, one of the few items he had successfully taken from Uzushiogakure prior to the outbreak of the plague. The fact that the book contained extremely classified information made it even more so. To return it to their leader, many good root members gave their lives. A list of 80 names and ages was included, along with a column listing the times and a third listing the locations. Shinobi from Uzushiogakure were listed first, followed by years of service away from their village and cities in every part of the continent. Danzo knew quite a few of the village names, but there were even some that he had never heard of. Danzo-sama. He had sent 2 people with blank masks to recon Naruto, and they had returned. Without even looking away from the book, Danzo said, "You're late, by at least 10 hours. The younger blonde kept his cool, but his breathing was deeper than normal because he had been running all day. "Sorry sir, but we had to avoid being tracked. Several Anbu were ghosting us." "Standard attempt," the older one said, a little nervously. "No, Danzo-sama, we crossed paths as they were also monitoring the target." He did not want Danzo-sama to be upset with him. "Did you kill any?" "No." "Good." Danzo appeared to loosen up a bit. "Keep it that way. I would rather you surrendered than get into a fight. If it happens I will get you out. Spread that to the other operatives." "Yes sir." Danzo glanced at an additional page of the book and asked, "What is your report?" "Unfortunately sir, we don't have much. The target noticed us." That caught Danzo's attention, and he closed the book without looking at his guests. "Really? How?" Some kind of instinctual warning, Danzo thought. "You must have done something wrong. What we're using as cover?" "Hiru Bansho. Boka no Jutsu," shot back the younger blonde. Danzo's brow furrowed. That was a very sophisticated stealth tactic. How long did he take to notice? Danzo opened his eye. "It's not a good sign for a root agent to say, The older one said, 30 seconds. Danzo-sama. Almost immediately after he left his hospital room, he could tell Danzo was upset by the way he held his cane, so he didn't need to guess. Danzo loosened his stance and leaned over to sip more tea before reopening his book. "Thank you. You're dismissed." The 2 root agents disappeared as soon as they arrived. They were able to recognize Danzo-sama's gift. Danzo kept reading the book, going over it again to make sure he hadn't missed anything. Danzo put the book down and looked around, partially to clear his mind and partially to ensure he was by himself. Old habits don't go away easily. Nothing was found in the treasure of his collection. Only 2 things he had determined from the book were that all of the shinobi's names were women under 30, and that none of their missions had lasted more than 10 years. The book didn't say anything else about Uzumaki Kushima, but she was on the list, disappeared for more than 3 years, and was sent to the land of Earth. Although Danzo had been around long enough to realize that Naruto was dangerous and needed to be controlled, and that the only way to do so was to learn his origins, he had no idea who or what Naruto was. Who is the father? Danzo was unable to name anyone that would spring to mind. It's either now or never, so screw it. Sigh. As soon as he said that, a young man appeared in front of him. He was not wearing a mask like the other root members, but his expression was blank, which made up for it. "Get a team together, we are going to Uzushiogakure." 6 a.m. on October 11th, just outside of Konohagakure, the 3rd training ground served as a general shinobi training facility surrounded by a small forest. A faint mist was gradually evaporating from the morning dawn, creating a distinctive color distortion on the nearby hills and forests. The birds greeted the day's first light with fresh vitality, that is, until 3 new genin arrived, making the chirping of the birds awkwardly quiet. In an attempt to establish a rapport with his new coworkers, Naruto tried to be as intelligent as possible when he said, "Hey guys." Sakura was rubbing her still tired eyes while slouching. Sakura said, "Good morning," but her voice was much more slurred, more like, "Good morning." Sakura might as well be asleep. Naruto thought with a smile as Naruto had predicted. Sasuke had a straight back, was more alert than he was, and had a blank expression on his face. Would it kill you to smile? Naruto thought. They gathered in the middle of the practice field. Well, we are on time at least. I thought I might have come a bit late. Naruto grinned. Sasuke merely grunted, and Sakura was too exhausted to speak. Naruto muttered to himself, talking to a tree might be a better way to have a conversation. Naruto surveyed the training area, which was largely empty except for a sizable lake on the edge and 3 massive stumps arranged side by side in the middle. Naruto asked, "This is the training ground, right? Where is he?" But he wasn't really expecting a response given his current company. "Oh, please don't tell me he is going to be an hour late again." Naruto was mistaken, and after 3 hours, the three of them had barely exchanged 2 sentences, and Kakashi was still nowhere to be seen. The sun was shining brightly above them, and the dawn had long since passed. Naruto was pacing in circles and said, "I don't frigging believe this." His anxiety increased with the passing of time. Sakura sat on the grass beside the motionless Sasuke, who had not moved an inch, and said, "Naruto, please sit down. You are beginning to agitate me. I swear. The man is a living statue or something." Naruto experienced an unpleasant growl in his stomach, which is a classic indicator that he did not eat his ramen in the morning. The idea of rising early for nothing at all made Naruto frown unpleasantly. "I may die of starvation by the time Kakashi-sensei arrives. That might be the concept. This training is going to be a bit more challenging than it needs to be, so apparently I was right." "You are most likely wait, how did you find out what Kakashi-sensei had planned?" And the darkness laughed. Naruto scowled at the remark but ignored it. "Or you could reach into your right jacket pocket. I could spend 4 hours telling you how good I am at understanding the stupid minds of people." Despite his curious expression, Naruto inserted his hand into the appropriate pocket and felt a cool emptiness. Sighing, Naruto thought it was a practical joke and was going to take it off when he felt something change in his hand. It was soft, lumpy, and rather large. Larger than a kunai or two. He stared at it in astonishment as he pulled it out into the light. A sandwich? Naruto didn't expect food from the darkness, he expected something else. "Yes, in fact while you were sleeping, one of the darklings made some." "Could the darklings work while I'm still asleep, please?" Naruto was beginning to struggle to keep up with the revelations that came with his newly acquired powers. It's possible that I overlooked that, Naruto would have argued, but his rather picky stomach won out, and he ate the sandwich in 2 goblets instead of biting down. "Peanut butter and jelly. Nice." He dug into his pocket to find 2 more there, which had also been gobbled up. Naruto turned to see Sakura frowning and staring at him, saying, "You're not supposed to eat that. We were told specifically not to eat for this exercise. He said that we would throw up." Staring at the 4th sandwich, Naruto considered it. It was true that Kakashi had warned them not to eat. Naruto looked at the training area and said, "That was for a training session very early in the morning. Now it is what time is it?" 9:30 a.m. Naruto looked at Sasuke, who had provided the information. He had his eye on the situation, keeping a close watch. The statue can be heard talking. Naruto pointed to their surroundings and said, 9:30 a.m., more than 3 hours after the time we were supposed to meet. I know I am new to this ninja thing, but I don't think I am being unreasonable in thinking it can't hurt to eat a little. It took Naruto a moment to realize that Sakura was staring at the sandwich in his hand, even though she was still frowning and as silent as Sasuke. The pink-haired girl's growling stomach was the telltale sign, but the staring was a clue. A smile appeared on Naruto's face as he said, "Haha, so you're hungry too." Sakura appeared embarrassed by the frankness of her stomach. Embarrassed, she lowered her head. Sasuke's poker face remained unaffected by Naruto's scrutiny, but his stomach made a sound that overshadowed Sakura's, finally revealing his true state of hunger. I'm curious." Sakura gave Naruto a look of pure venom, and he could almost feel her rage radiating. Well, it seems that I am at an advantage here. With 2 starving teammates, I could say the chances of coming out on top have greatly increased." The first display of emotion Naruto had ever witnessed was when Sasuke's eyes narrowed and one of his hands clenched. Naruto threw the sandwich he was holding onto Sakura's lap and said, "I'm kidding." Sakura's expression was one of complete surprise. "Why?" He took another sandwich out of his pocket and tossed it to Sasuke, who caught it with one hand. "Well, I thought about not giving you any food, but I am not as bad as you think. Besides, I have a distinct feeling that if Kakashi found out I have been snacking on food during his absence, I could get into trouble. This is just me spreading the punishment." Sakura looked at Sasuke, who was examining the sandwich closely in his hand, probably to check for drugs, with a hint of curiosity. Naruto asked, puzzled, paranoid much, Sasuke? Sasuke bit into it with a sort of fervor and grunted something that sounded like, thanks. Without even pausing, Sakura quickly devoured the sandwich. When Naruto reached into his pocket once more, nothing was found. The sandwiches, not some meat sacks that shouldn't be in the same area code, are for my host. The cloud gradually surrounded Naruto's mind, and the darkness sounded, to put it mildly, irritated. Just a sandwich, nothing more, give me one, please. Know what? I heard you. Why you? Naruto could feel the darkness edging away from his will as he pictured taking food out of his pocket. Let me have it. Something was beginning to take shape in Naruto's closed hand. Naruto could feel the darkness draining him. His arms started to sting as it writhed in rage. The darkness threw a number of insults, but Naruto refused to give in and pulled a peanut butter sandwich with a defiant yank. Naruto said, gotcha, his voice was triumphant. Sakura was staring at Naruto, and more significantly, the sandwich he was holding. Naruto asked, Naruto, what are you doing? As Naruto said, oh nothing, just a stubborn sandwich, yeah. His face turned a deep red that was as strong as strawberries. As he gave Sakura his prize, Naruto glanced at her sly face and said, you know Naruto, you're very strange. Then something unexpected occurred. Naruto noticed a tiny but noticeable smile on Sasuke's face. I get that a lot. Are you smiling? Was the prompt response. No, Sasuke came across as a bit defensive, which only made Naruto laugh. Sasuke was still feeling nauseous and asked, can you pass me another sandwich please? Not as heartless as I had assumed. If anything, the darkness was a prepared force. In addition to sandwiches, Naruto produced a dozen other foods, including apples, chocolates, and even a soda as though they hadn't eaten in weeks. Naruto divided the food equally among his new teammates. However, the darkness, who appeared to be very determined to prevent Naruto from sharing the food, made it harder for Naruto to give up each item he took. You're fighting, but why? Because, Naruto, why should the cattle benefit from what I grant you alone? Hey, we have to follow the crowd. If we want to get along, we must, I suppose, rely on teamwork, which entails sharing. It will take some time for us to get to know one another completely because we have only known one another for a day, but I have some good news for you. I don't distribute. The darkness was writhing, but not in a way that hurt Naruto. Well, you do now. The darkness's insistence that Naruto can only do what he wants as long as the darkness permits it was the one thing that stood out. However, Naruto was removing food against its will, which seriously violates that regulation. At the very least, Naruto sensed that the darkness was lying to him, if not playing tricks on him. Although some resistance to change is always normal, the newly endowed host found the rapid pace of events to be too much. All three of Team 7 members were quite full by the time the meal was over. Sakura gave her stomach a gentle pat and said, that was good. Despite the snack's simplicity, she appeared to be the happiest about it. Feel better, Sasuke-kun? As he finished the last bar of chocolate, Sasuke grunted. Despite his hunger, he carefully examined every part of the food and constantly watched Naruto. Some serious problems with trust. Sakura looked at the ground and said, hey, thanks for the food, you didn't have to do that. Naruto flashed a corny smile. Well, by the sounds of it we are going to be together for a while, so might as well get along. Sakura's face turned a deep purple as she said, yeah? Look, I just want to apologize about yesterday. That was very rude of me. Naruto's eyes narrowed a little as he asked, still bent out of shape over that? He could feel Sakura writhing beneath his stare. Water under the bridge fair? Okay. Sakura appeared to get happier after that. What time is it? Sasuke stood with his back straight, like a soldier on parade, and said, 10:45 a.m. Still no show for Kakashi. Where is he? Here. Kakashi strolled at a leisurely pace along the main path leading to the training ground. He seemed unfazed by the fact that he was more than 4 hours late. You're late, exclaimed Sakura. It became clear to Kakashi that his students were more likely to think he was kidnapped by aliens than the explanation he received. Yeah, about that. I saw a black cat along the road, so I had to take a detour through. Kakashi walked to the central stump in the training area and set a small black alarm clock on it, saying, well, shall we get to work? When he tapped its side, a soft ticking started to reverberate throughout the field. The alarm has been set to 12 p.m. A pair of bells on a string were pulled out of one of Kakashi's pouches. The three of them gazed at the odd items hanging from Kakashi's fingers. Kakashi pointed to 3 stumps in the middle of the training area and said, your job is to get these bells from me. Whoever does not get a bell will not get any lunch. I will tie you up and eat lunch in front of you. Sakura, Naruto, and perhaps even Sasuke were secretly giggling they could skip lunch and eat well into the afternoon because of how much food they had eaten in the last hour. Naruto at least tried to maintain a straight face for the time being, but a more intimidating idea occurred to him. This is ridiculous. How am I expected to do that? Aren't you supposed to teach me? I am a firm believer in training as you go. You seem to be among Konoha's most indolent senseis. Is this what you meant when you said there would be no leniency? Kakashi fastened the bells, which hung just above the waist, around one of the holes in his Chunin jacket. Now my dear students, if you want these bells, you're going to have to come at me with the will to kill me. Sakura appeared worried about the possibility of attempting to murder their sensei. Kakashi-sensei, we can't do that, their voice said. You can't, Sakura? Kakashi asked, fumbling for something in his back pocket. Well, I guess you're out of luck. Might as well flunk you and send you back to the academy. Naruto. Sasuke, it is all up to you now. Sakura turned to face a rather stoic Sasuke, who narrowed his eyes at the two bells their opponent was holding. On the other hand, Naruto appeared remarkably composed, but his eyes were fixed slightly upward, clearly considering how to obtain a bell. Being so close to Sasuke-kun makes it impossible for me to be apart from him. Apologies. Naruto. Sakura experienced some embarrassment, but it was out of love. Her inner voice was tenfold in favor of that view. In addition, you can now return and resume your regular ninja training. With renewed determination, she turned back to her somewhat apathetic sensei beneath his mask. Kakashi smiled. Change of heart, Sakura. Good. He looked at the three pupils, who showed differing levels of dedication and willpower. He observed a fiery confidence in Sasuke, as well as a lack of fear and uncertainty, and it was clear that the idea of failure had not crossed his mind. A surprise is in store for him. Sakura was completely unconfident. In fact, Kakashi honestly believed she would be the first to leave. However, her glare at him after seeing Sasuke and Naruto restored his faith, at least temporarily. Then there was Naruto, and what fascinated the masked ninja was that there was a great deal of worry and concern, probably wondering how he was going to get a bell, but there was also no fear. But beneath his straw hat, there was a slightly raised eyebrow, which is a sign of skepticism. It is clear that Naruto did not believe Kakashi when he said that. Ironically, the person with the least amount of experience is already the closest to understanding my intentions. All three tensed up and assumed a ready stance as he asked, ready? And go. The speed at which Sakura and Sasuke plunged into the bushes impressed Kakashi a little. In contrast, Naruto was a little slower, but not bad for a boy who had only been a ninja for 2 days. Well, I suppose we'll have to wait now. After finding what he was looking for, Kakashi took out Icha Paradise, his favorite orange book. While I'm at it, I might fit in some reading time. I wonder whether Marita and Toko will end up dating. With his hand hovering over his leg pouch, Sasuke hid in a shrub on the very edge of the area close to the lake. He appeared completely detached from everything around him as he watched the masked sensei pull out an orange book. This is my opportunity. Sasuke carefully aimed and slowly withdrew 2 shuriken. The raven-haired character turned to face Naruto, who appeared to be struggling to balance on a tree branch, and said, "Psst, Sasuke." Sasuke didn't need to be sidetracked by this non-ninja. What do you want? Get out of here and find your own hiding spot. Naruto sighed and said, yeah, that is what I need to talk to you about. Look, I think Kakashi-sensei is trying to screw with us. What makes you say that? Sasuke asked, giggling like a schoolgirl as he reverted to his position on his branch, surveying his sensei. Great, my sensei is a weirdo. Look, I did some reading and Naruto barely dodged a number of kunai that were hurled in their general direction by their sensei, while Naruto, a blatant novice, reacted too hastily with needless movements, and the branch beneath him broke from the stress, causing him to land on the ground with a metallic crunch. Sasuke only realized it at the last second and shifted his weight to allow the kunai to pass by him. Amazingly, I didn't even see Sasuke reach for his pouch before he fell to the ground like a cat. However, I shouldn't have expected any less from a Junin. The heavily armored genin caught up to Sasuke, who heard him say, Sasuke, wait up, I need to talk to you. Sasuke kept slithering through the brush to reach a new viewpoint, saying, buzz off, Naruto. Because of you, my cover was blown, you moron. Naruto was shocked at his teammate's rudeness and said, hey, no need to get nasty. Listen, Naruto, I thank you for the food, because of that I will last longer in this match and I stand a better chance at getting the bells. Sasuke grumbled. But don't think I am going to go out of my way to help you, in case you have not noticed it, as every man for himself. Hey jackass, if you listen to me I can. Sasuke turned to the rather irritated blonde and said, I don't care what you have to say, Naruto, you have no training and no knowledge. Frankly, I don't even know why you are here. Sasuke disappeared into a nearby shrub after saying, "You seem like a decent guy. But that is not enough in this business. Maybe with further training you might have a shot. Until then I suggest you leave." He paused for a moment when he heard mumbling in the background. "Sasuke, wait." Sasuke's blood ran cold at the sound of that voice. It could not be human. He turned to see a rather deserted clearing where Naruto had once been. "Forget it, boss. The emo freak is an asshole. Let us try Forehead-chan." Kakashi exhaled in relief after preventing Sasuke and Naruto from formulating a plan. Additionally, he laughed when he witnessed Naruto strike the ground with a nearly comical thud and an even more comical yell. But this supported his suspicions, so Naruto has probably figured out what the test is about. That in and of itself indicates that Naruto has gained his sensei's respect. However, Kakashi will not make things simple for him just because he understands the nature of the test. Kakashi turned another page and said, "Sorry kids, but you are going to have to try much harder than that." Sakura rolled her eyes at the blonde in armor and said, "Yeah, right. I am not joking here, Sakura." Naruto made some sincere attempts to inform his new teammates of the situation, but they appeared unwilling to accept his assistance. "He wants us to work together." "Then why the two bells, huh?" Naruto reached into his inner pocket and felt the center book at the tips of his fingers. "That is what I have been trying to explain to you. If you will look at this, it will explain everything." Sakura tried to wave him away, saying, "Naruto, we don't have time for this. I don't have time for this." "Damn it, Sakura, read the damn book," she growled. "Do you think I'm stupid? This is just some trick so you could get a bell. You are not separating me from my Sasuke-kun." "Your Sasuke-kun?" Naruto asked, trying to concentrate because he could feel the darkness laughing and circling his head, wondering what the hell he had gotten himself into. Sakura clambered into a few more bushes and disappeared from view, saying, "Yes, now buzz off," probably the best thing as well, since she avoided having to see Uzumaki Naruto's rather angry face. Naruto turned to a rather amused darkling who was hiding beneath the base of a shrub and asked, "Is this team completely insane?" Naruto saw a twisted smile shining from the shadows and thought, "Like we said, boss, it sucks to be you. What now?" Yeesh. Before the kunoichi disappeared deeper into the surrounding trees, Kakashi watched the brief altercation between the pink and blonde-haired genin. This team has issues. The test was clearly functioning, but it was functioning too well as usual. None of the 12 teams that Kakashi has used this test for have advanced. They differed from the current team, though, in that one of them was aware of what was happening but chose not to pay attention. A rustle of leaves caught Kakashi's attention as Naruto entered the main clearing. Naruto appears to have stopped requesting assistance. Kakashi turned the page of his book again. "So," thought Kakashi, "what are you doing out here?" Naruto kept his hat down over his face and said, "Trying to get a bell." "That's so?" The first time someone of his genin asked that question, Kakashi raised an eyebrow and said, "Don't suppose if I ask nicely, you'll give me one?" With the faintest hint of a smile hidden behind the mask, Kakashi lowered the book to chest height and said, "Nice try, Naruto. But no." Naruto appeared unfazed and assumed a basic ready stance, putting one hand in his trench coat's side pocket. "Let's see what you can do, Naruto." The armored genin took his hand out of his pocket without hesitation and hurled 3 kunai with all the force he could muster at his masked sensei. Instead of flying, the kunai shot swiftly in the direction of its target. Kakashi dodged the attack by tilting his head slightly to the right. Looking surprised, Kakashi dodged the attack by tilting his head slightly to the right, looking utterly bored. "I forgot that he is a Junin." Several more weapons appeared in the palm of Naruto's hand as he sighed and reached back into his pocket as he braced himself for another assault. He watched his sensei charge forward quickly. The masked man appeared to be daydreaming more than engaging in combat. "What a clever asshole. I could retreat back into the trees, but he will reach me before then." He threw another set of kunai, but this time they missed their target. Additionally, there are too many spaces between the trees and leaves, so backup is not an option. Oh, forget about this. Withdrawing as many kunai, shuriken, and other jagged metal objects as he could conjure from the emptiness, Naruto charged forward. As they got closer to one another, Kakashi began to move more quickly and talkatively. When the genin first struck, his fist went straight into his sensei's stomach, but it was caught in midair. Naruto tried to sweep his opponent with a quick sidestep, but Kakashi-sensei, a Junin, lifted the targeted leg and slammed his foot down on it, stopping it in its tracks. Naruto continued to punch the Junin, occasionally delivering a rib shot, but it was difficult to launch a forceful attack because his foot was pinned. Apparently fed up with his efforts, Kakashi let go of his opponent's foot and kicked him hard in the chest, sending Naruto reeling back a few meters. "Damn it," Naruto held out his hands as if to deter an impending attack, but a dozen shuriken appeared from beneath his sleeves as though they were spring-loaded. That is a little different. Kakashi quickly sprinted to the left to avoid the onslaught and saw Naruto charging at him while brandishing a short sword that he had taken from his coat's inner pockets, but not different enough. Naruto brought the sword down so forcefully that the silver-haired sensei would have been decapitated, but it struck the earth with a dull thump, sending dirt flying. The smooth voice of Kakashi behind him said, "You know Naruto, you have potential, but you're a little flustered." Naruto instantly repositioned his grip in anticipation of another swing. "Maybe you should cool off. Watch out, Naruto." Sakura's well-known voice called out from the woods for Naruto's comfort. She sounded a bit too anxious. Konohagakure Hiden Taijutsu Ogi, Senin Garashi. Give a thunk twang. Well, what the devil was that? The wind through his hair helped Naruto regain consciousness. Am I flying? And why does my butt hurt? Naruto tried to concentrate, but his entire world was whirling in all directions. When he reached the top of his aerial arc, it finally calmed down, and Naruto was able to concentrate on his surroundings for a brief moment. He could see his sensei standing quietly reading his book while he was at least 10 meters above the ground. Did he really do me a colonoscopy of some sort? Naruto would have thought about hurling a number of extremely offensive curses that a child of his age shouldn't know, but he saw that he was beginning to accelerate. Quickly looking down with a mixture of surprise and horror, he saw the lake's rather large body of water zooming toward him, or rather, he was speeding toward the lake. Oh no! Make a splash. Thinking back on his rather short encounter with the armored blonde, Kakashi quickly turned to a new page. For someone who had only been a ninja for a little more than 24 hours, he was impressive, and the spring-loaded shuriken was a nice touch. The child is naturally skilled at throwing shuriken and kunai, and his body movements and footwork were reflexive rather than trained. His taijutsu is terrible and his footwork is subpar, but that was to be expected, and his planning skills are awesome. Most ninja would have little trouble catching up to the armored blonde, but Naruto's speed and agility were lacking. I guess all those years as a woodcutter might come in handy. After all, he was strong, though, easily Chunin strength, and his stamina is above average. Those who stared at the masked ninja could hardly see Kakashi's smile. It looks like the Hokage may be correct about this child. He turned to another page and flexed his startled fingers. The technique that sent Naruto flying, which is not typical, still caused pain. I suppose this is what happens when you attempt to use a ridiculous move on someone who is that heavily armored. Like Senin Garashi, it still produced the intended result. Naruto struck the water so hard that it seemed as though his bare skin was on fire. He hit the lake's bottom with mud flying upwards as he swiftly sank like a stone. Calm down, please, just get up and relax. Naruto grunted to stand up, letting go of some air from his lungs. What was I thinking? Armor was a bad idea. Already his lungs were getting constricted. His eyes tried to take in the scene, but it was all so dark. The lake is deep, damn it. When Naruto turned around, he felt something squished into his mouth and his lungs filled with fresh air. That is good for us, boss. When his gaze returned, he saw Frutz slowly floating in the water with a toothy, ridiculously large snorkel in its mouth and a Cheshire grin from ear to ear. Frutz? Naruto asked as he felt a mouthpiece attached to an air tank jam into his face. Frutz pointed to a number of darklings floating around the dark lake as though on vacation and said, "Yeah, boss, I told you we will help you if we can." Naruto saw Goldbrick slithering through the water like an eel attempting to devour a fish that was too far away to approach. Dran and Xran were busy playing baseball with a rock lobster. This Kakashi is a serious piece of work. At least he is not going to seriously kill you. Through the scuba gear, Naruto murmured, "What if he was?" Frutz glared at the lake's surface and said, "We would never have let you set foot on the training ground. We would have taken steps to make sure that you would have been safe." Naruto exhaled deeply in relief and said, "Okay. Well, at least you're here now." The darklings who were having fun suddenly gathered around their host with eerie smiles as they asked, "So guys, what do you think I should do?" A random darkling sneered, "Well, boss, a standard darkling, like us, can't survive even being partially submerged in sunlight." "Okay." Frutz pointed to something behind its master and said, "But," holding up a long clawed finger, "there are some of us that have been conditioned to survive in partial sunlight." When Naruto turned around, he noticed something that made him question whether he had run out of breath. "Hiya boss, I'm Dopolis." In the eerily silent training area, Kakashi glanced at Sakura, Sasuke, and the lake before returning his attention to his book. At the moment, Sakura was hiding even farther into the nearby forest, affixing some explosive tags to a number of kunai. Only the stupid or the insanely determined would use so many explosive tags, the Junin smirked. In order to find the fastest attack with the least amount of transition time, Sasuke was skulking in a U shape between the trees. Kakashi's battle with Naruto provided a brief preview of the sensei's skills. Sasuke was aware that if he missed, he would not be given another chance. Naruto had been in the lake for a number of minutes, and he had yet to emerge. He might have drowned. Kakashi was becoming a little restless, walking more resolutely toward the lake, prepared to jump in at any time. I'm going in 10 seconds if he's not up. And so the clock ticked away. Although he had caused some serious injuries to his former teams, particularly if they had given him attitude, none of them had died, so the Junin pocketed the book and braced himself for the worst. At that moment, he saw a thin line of ripples move across the lake's surface. He will arrive when Naruto jumped out of the water, his eyes blazing with anger. Kakashi was all too shocked. I'm going to rip your balls off, you CYCLOPTIC son of a whore. As a professional card shark, Sakura was now sifting through the explosive tags in her hand. 43, 44, 45. She was counting when she heard the sounds of a battle. What is going on out there? After putting the tags in her back pouch, she scurried as fast as she could while being cautious not to crush any fallen branches or leaves. To get a better view, she scuttled under a bush. Is it Sasuke? The thought of seeing him battle their sensei and kick his ass made her heart race, but Sasuke wasn't the one engaged in combat with the Junin. Sakura's gaze was fixed on the armored blonde as he pushed Kakashi-sensei back, saying, "Whoa Naruto." In fact, Kakashi was losing ground. She whispered to herself, "You have got to be kidding me." Up until recently, Sakura believed that Sasuke was the only person who could measure up to Kakashi, and she could not bear to even touch him. Naruto must be full of surprises. It took everything she had not to scream in shock when she felt an iron grip around her ankle. Sakura looked and saw a pair of blue eyes and an iron grip coming from a nearby shrub. Naruto? Sasuke was on the verge of actually sitting down to observe the battle taking place in front of him. He never would have thought that a non-ninja like Naruto could compete with a Junin. There was nothing fancy about the blonde's taijutsu. In fact, it was sloppy and downright horrible. It looked more like a wild animal fighting than a ninja, but that doesn't mean it wasn't effective as he blocked and repelled the new shinobi's audacious initiative. Sasuke could actually see the strained expression on the sensei's face. Even though Naruto's speed was well within Sasuke's grasp, it would be challenging to maintain continuously without growing weary. While he is preoccupied, perhaps this is my chance with luck. One of the bells might break off during the attack as Sasuke carefully aimed a dozen shuriken at Kakashi's lower abdomen. Pissed emo freak. Sasuke whirled around, prepared to confront the idiot who had the audacity to refer to Uchiha Sasuke as a emo freak, only to encounter an odd person who was hanging upside down and using the tree branch above Sasuke as support. The entire thing was covered in leather, and its big ears, which resembled horns, protruded straight up, or, from Sasuke's perspective, straight down, while its tiny, white eyes glared at him with icy disdain. Sasuke held a kunai close to the creature's throat, or at least what he thought was its throat, and said, What are you?" But it did not even flinch. The creature's eyes narrowed even more as it said, "I'm Batman." This was probably an intimidation tactic. As an afterthought, it added something else after realizing that Sasuke was more perplexed than scared. Rawr. "What? Nothing. Boss wants to see you, so get your ass over to the small clearing 30 meters west of here." The boss, Naruto. The creature snorted in annoyance, as though it thought Sasuke would recognize him. "And if I don't?" the creature asked, revealing a smile with bright white teeth that were sharper than the kunai Sasuke was holding. The raven-haired Uchiha's heart actually raced at this. "Emo freak, you really don't want to say no to me? People get crippled when they say no to me." Sasuke took the creature's threat at face value for an inexplicable reason. Sakura and Sasuke gazed at Naruto with fresh curiosity. His hair, which was no longer spiky, flopped to the side like a damp mop, and he still looked as though he had just stepped out of a tsunami. All that was left of him was his black undershirt and shorts. His boots were gone, along with his trench coat, armor, and wide-brimmed straw hat. With a huge frown on his face, the blonde's sour mood was not improved by Sasuke's accusing tone when he asked, "What happened to you?" He reached into his back pocket, took out a small book, and tossed it shamefully to the Uchiha, muttering angrily, "Now that I have your attention." Sasuke picked up the book carefully, its pages still wet. Naruto watched as Sasuke obeyed and started reading in silence, saying, "Flip to the bookmarked page." His eyes narrowed as they finished darting across the book, the only sign that he understood what was written. His tone was suspicious, and Naruto couldn't believe the Uchiha still believed this was a ruse. "Where did you get this?" he asked. "Konoha Center. What do you think, Sakura?" Sasuke asked, keeping his gaze fixed on the blonde as he gave the book to the girl with the pink hair next to him. Unlike the Uchiha, Sakura's eyes widened in shock as she carefully took the book and read the same passages as Sasuke. In order to verify the authenticity, she swiftly examined the cover and closely examined a few additional pages. Sakura raised her head to gaze at Naruto and said, "This is the real deal?" Sakura's words, "Only a Chunin can check this book out. How did you get it? Stealing?" sounded both impressed and almost repulsed. Naruto's lips formed a wry grin. He sighed deeply when silence responded to his question. "Does it really matter? Does what you read sound familiar?" he asked, and both of their looks supported his claim. Naruto pointed to his damp clothes and shorts and said, "Good, then we have to work together. If you had listened to me before, I wouldn't have had to resort to this. If you're here, then what is Kakashi-sensei fighting? Don't tell me that is a Bunshin." Throughout his time in the academy, Sasuke had studied and watched a number of different Bunshin, but he had never seen one like the one Kakashi was fighting because it was too powerful, too quick, and capable of taking a good blow. The darkness, however, was less cooperative. Naruto said, "That does not matter. Once we pass this test I will explain." "A bad idea, Naruto. Don't let me stop you." Although the blonde blanched slightly, it quickly overcame its reservations. Sasuke's eyes became so narrow that it appeared as though he was squinting. "So, Naruto, you got a plan?" Naruto's face twisted into a smile for reasons he couldn't understand. "Well, now that you mention it, I don't have faith in this." Kakashi grunted and thought. Although Naruto's hands were moving too quickly for him to keep up, he was unable to begin reading for fear of being struck in the jaw. With a grin that stretched from ear to ear, Naruto mockingly said, "Come on, Cyclops, give me a colonoscopy, will you? Throw me into the air? You'll look pretty funny eating a corn on the cob without any teeth." The blonde twists his entire body backwards, effectively ducking beneath an attack that would have sent him flying back when the sensei attempted to distance himself from the mad genin by delivering a sweeping kick across Naruto's chest. Naruto instantly twisted back up to confront a rather startled Kakashi, who had been shot in the ribs. "Nice try, Cyclops, but I am not going to make it easy on you, ha. What's the matter with this child? Is anger the catalyst for Kakashi's abilities? He would have healed from a pretty impressive punch, but he would be damned if he gave in to this little brat. Does anger or humiliation make him stronger?" Kakashi monitored his surroundings in hopes of seeing any of the creatures mentioned in the reports he had read, but nothing had shown up as of yet. Another blow to the ribs broke the Junin's train of thought. "Okay, Naruto, you requested this." Naruto then delivered another blow, but this time it struck air instead, and Kakashi instantly disappeared when he felt a steely grip encircle his ankle. He asked, "Where are you, Cyclops? What the F? Doden. Shinjuzanshu no Jutsu." Kakashi looked at the blonde genin in front of him with fresh interest and thought, "Okay, Naruto, I admit I am impressed. You are more unique than I thought." The straw-hatted head that protruded from the ground was the only sign that Kakashi was not speaking to it. "Just for the record, Naruto, I am your sensei. You should treat me with more respect. Don't call me Cyclops." Naruto then burst out laughing beneath his hat. "Well, that is too bad, Cyclops, because you are not my sensei and I am not the boss." Naruto raised the brim of his hat to reveal a changed face. His skin had turned from a healthy pink to an ugly gray, and his eyes had turned a deep red, with long fangs growing out of his mouth. Kakashi stepped back and said, "What the hell?" Naruto exploded, engulfing Kakashi in the 9th largest explosion of his career. Kaboom, bitch. Ha 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 ha. When Kakashi went on most missions, he was in Anbu, which meant death and destruction. Assassinations made up the majority of Kakashi's missions. He was not proud of what he accomplished at Anbu, but he would carry it with him to the afterlife. That was ultimately one of the reasons he departed. He was really turned off by the entire Anbu thing, though, because of other things, like the fact that everyone was trying to kill him. Oh, and many of his opponents tried to kill him by melting, stabbing, drowning, or even just waiting him out. But during his missions, Hitaki Kakashi invariably encountered an explosion. It seemed to be a natural occurrence. The grass is green, the sky is blue, and people attempt to blow Kakashi up. Recording the types of explosions he had seen and classifying them according to their lethality almost turned into a pastime. With his ears ringing, Kakashi positioned Naruto's self-detonation above that disastrous mission in Yuki no Kuni, but somewhere below that Iwa Shinobi in Tasuki no Kuni. Kakashi's head was spinning wildly, but he managed to regain enough senses to detect a brush of air beside his legs and the sound of movement behind him. He didn't have to work hard to detect the very solid punch in his stomach that sent him tumbling to the ground. That was insane. After the smoke subsided and his ears ceased to ring, Kakashi ventured to open his exposed eye and fixed his attention on the pink-haired Hanoro and the stoic Uchiha. When he saw them, Kakashi knew something was amiss. He tapped the side of his shinobi vest and made the startling discovery that the bells were gone. "Okay, then let us see what you can do." Wait. When he discovered each bell in the hands of the genin in front of him, his eyes widened in surprise. That isn't possible. Sasuke still had a slightly melancholy appearance, But his wry smile betrayed his pleasure. Sakura, however, shouted, "Banzai!" more loudly, as loud as she could. A rustling sound came from behind him, and Kakashi turned to see Naruto scuttling around the large hole in the ground. He was picking up pieces of what was left of the armor while cursing, and the Junin watched in mild amazement. "Friggin' hell, Doppelus, now I need another set, stupid darkling." Kakashi was truly in awe. If Naruto had been present, he would have been slaughtered if he had discovered that what he was fighting was a bunshin. A training manual would not include a self-detonating bunshin. At the very least, it is a Junin-level technique. Does that come naturally? I'm not sure where he would have discovered it. "Yes," Naruto exclaimed, lifting the dirt-streaked but largely undamaged trench coat from the ground. "Fireproof and explosive-proof. Damn, the old man undervalued it." Naruto turned to face a rather stern-looking Kakashi and asked, "Naruto, what was that technique?" "What? A self-detonating bunshin is not a technique I have seen, and I have seen most of them." Kakashi stood up straight and extended his arms. "I am immensely curious." Don't mention Naruto to him. The blonde genin could hear a chorus of screams as the darkness attacked his mind. What harm could it do, anyway? It's a mistake. Lots. Naruto, I suggest you think again. Would you mind making me? What? Let the record bear witness to my warning? Well, Naruto located his hat close by and carefully lifted it. That was not a bunshin, it was a darkling. Sakura arched an eyebrow. "Darkling?" Holding his coat and hat in the air as if he were going to set them on an invisible coat rack, Naruto said, "It is a special summons, let me show you." As soon as possible, smoke began to form and solidify from the very center of the coat as a new Naruto appeared in the coat and hat. The other members of Team 7 watched in awe. The new Naruto glared at the other members of the team, revealing clawed fingers before swiftly drawing them back into his coat. "Alright, who, do you want me to cut?" he asked. The manifestation hurriedly pulled the hat as far down across his face as it could and wrapped the coat around him as though he was freezing. "What the hell, boss? It is friggin' bright out here. Where are the rest of your clothes? It hurts being exposed to this much light." "Relax, Doppelus, just wanted to introduce you the rest of the team." "No maiming. No maiming." The cloaked Naruto rolled his eyes, clearly disappointed, and said, "Be nice, Doppelus." The phony Naruto flashed a toothy grin and said, "Fine." When the real Naruto slapped the fake genin across the side of the head. "Emo freak. Forehead-chan. Cyclops, I'm Doppelus, nice to meet you, ouch." The fake genin frowned. Sasuke and Sakura gave this darkling one of the most irate looks the Junin had ever seen, while Kakashi simply grunted in disapproval at his blatantly new moniker. "Why, you little..." Sakura lunged forward to choke the Naruto impersonator, but Kakashi grabbed her by the shoulder. "Don't do it, Sakura, that is what it wants." The fake Naruto's eyes turned red instead of blue, as if to support their sensei's assertion. "You're smarter than you look, Cyclops, Doppelus." "Enough." The original Naruto's eyes made the fake one wither. "Apologize, now." "Sorry, Kakashi, Sakura, Sasuke." The Doppelus-like creature appeared to want to say more but grudgingly said nothing. Kakashi gave a loud sigh and brushed away the extra dirt that had gotten stuck in his vest. "Well, gang, I admit it, I am very impressed. You are the first team to have ever come this close to passing." Wait. What do you mean, this close? What about getting the bells to pass?" Kakashi pulled out a familiar little book before straightening up and saying, "Well, that technically is true." Sakura's face turned as red as a tomato as she said, "Except when you sucker punched me in the gut, Sakura. I lifted your pouch. I must admit this was the last thing I would expect to find, but I thought something was a little odd with the way you were acting, Naruto." Kakashi turned to the appropriate bookmarked page in the book. "The bell test was passed on to me by my father just as it was passed on to him by the Sandaime. This test has been the bane of many students who were unfortunate enough to get me as their sensei." "So," Sasuke appeared to be about to choke the Junin with the silver hair. Kakashi held up the book as though it were on display and explained, "So, you were supposed to figure out this test by yourself," adding that, having this book would qualify as cheating in theory. In unison, the three genin exclaimed, "What? Don't play dumb, Naruto. From what I can tell, you must have gone to the library and did a little bit of reading on what I could throw at you. I admit you were clever in determining this test as the most logical choice, but knowing about its purpose before experiencing it renders the test moot." "I don't believe this." Sakura appeared as though she might burst into tears. The group turned to face Doppelus, who was smiling beneath his coat, and said, "That's funny, coming from a shinobi." "Doppelus, what are you doing?" Doppelus raised the brim of his hat and gave the sensei a fierce look, saying, "Let me handle this, boss. I have worked in this business of serving the boss and his predecessors for a long time. I have spent many years working with Ninja and Nier, as I can tell you are all a bunch of hacks and cheats. Dopolis gave Sakura and Sasuke a nod. Those two are likely to become conniving backstabbers who will murder their opponent when they are not looking, but that is the nature of the beast, researching their enemies for weaknesses so they can kill them as quickly as possible. As natural as breathing. Accusing my boss of cheating is nothing short of hypocrisy. True, added Sakura. Besides, you did not specify that Naruto could not research on tests, nor did you specify that he could not flat out tell us what he found. Naruto smiled and added, furthermore, I would hate the rumor that you are a sore loser follow you around should you fail us. It made Kakashi wonder, is that a threat? From Naruto? No, he is a cutie pie. The clone gave its master a grandmotherly squeeze on the cheek. The monster put on its best, scary face, which appeared to be an overextended grin that exposed multiple rows of teeth, and said, from me, you can bloody well count on it. Remember Cyclops, I got you once, I can do it again. The team could swear their sensei's laugh sounded more nervous than amused, but they can't be certain. Is that any way to treat your master's sensei? Sensei? Newsflash genius, I don't answer to you. I answer to the boss and the boss alone. Naruto appeared extremely irritated as he said, that is right, you answer to me, and you show Kakashi-sensei some respect. The clone of its master rolled its demon eyes and said, peeved, whatever. Despite this, Naruto continued to glare at Dopolis, but he does have a point. Kakashi-sensei. It seems contradictory that we would not be allowed to research. The Junin appeared to smile beneath his mask, saying, HMPH, well, you did get the bells all right, you pass. Sakura and Naruto's cheering overpowered the next words. But I should tell you that this is a unique decision considering you were told about this test as opposed to learning it. I am still not so sure you appreciate the gravity of teamwork. Kakashi's expression was more serious. So I will pass you provisionally for the time being. If I do not see a sense that this team will survive together, I will disband it and send you all to the academy. All three genin gave a nod. Sakura, Sasuke, if it was not for Naruto's assistance you would have completely failed this test. Make no mistake, you genin passed because of someone who has no training. I think it is time you acknowledge him as someone who saved your ass. Sakura said something that sounded like, thanks, but Sasuke remained silent. The blonde caught the sensei's attention. Naruto. I know your comrades did not inspire much faith, but part of a team requires to look underneath the underneath. I saw the look in your eyes. Your teammates are not burdens and you passed because of them just as much as they passed because of you. Dopolis erupted, that is a sack of bullshit MMF, but Naruto's firm hold silenced him. Okay sensei. Under his mask, Kakashi's posture relaxed, and he grinned broadly. Okay, then I hereby pass team 7 inches. Congratulations, I will see you tomorrow. Sakura blushed as she remembered something. You hear that Sasuke, we passed this calls for celebration, want to hit the restaurants? She asked. Naruto, do you want to come along? My treat? The blonde maintained a questioning expression, but a toothy smile appeared on his lips. Love to. The blonde said, whoa, hang on Naruto, his shoulders were tightly held. Where do you think you are going? I was, with a playful gleam in his eye. Kakashi glanced up and down at him and said, in case you have forgotten, the one who did not get a bell does not get lunch. The line of rope in his hand was something Naruto could not help noticing. Off to the post with you. It appeared that the darkling Dopolis was both mildly annoyed and remarkably amused. Naruto moaned and turned to face Sakura and Sasuke, who both appeared disappointed. Well, Sakura was disappointed, and Sasuke appeared to be constipated. You guys go on ahead, I'll see you later, enjoy your date. It's not a date, you moron, Sakura exclaimed, looking very agitated. Wait, is it? It was, coincidentally, that Sasuke slipped into the trees. The newly formed Team 7 had a highly controlled schedule since the bell test. They go to the Hokage office every morning at around 7 a.m., which quickly becomes 9 a.m. because of Kakashi's tardiness, to retrieve a list of D-rank missions, which they then spend the rest of the morning completing. It was mostly child-related tasks, such as lawn mowing, gardening, chopping wood, which clearly annoyed Naruto, but at the same time, that task was always left to him alone, and even babysitting. They would always finish in training in the afternoons, trying to improve their teamwork. Every team inevitably has a specialty. His discussions with Asuma and Kurenai revealed that their teams were very good at tracking and incapacitating opponents, respectively. Taijutsu and other hand-to-hand fighting techniques appeared to be the main specializations of Maeda Gai's Genin team. The fact that none of the 3 Genin in Team 7's training would try to end the battle right away but would instead attack and swiftly withdraw made it clear that they were experts in long-term guerrilla warfare instead of defending when Kakashi pursued. they would always give up ground and quickly disperse and reorganize. In most situations, Sakura served as the team's shield, diversion, covering fire expert, and occasionally bait. Kakashi was aware of Naruto and Sasuke's close relationship. No matter where she was, she could effortlessly escape a difficult situation and throw explosive tags and kunai with accuracy while evading capture thanks to her well above average chakra control. The spear, counter-ambush expert, and executor was Sasuke. When Kakashi did not feel like letting Sakura escape so easily, his clan's signature fire jutsu came in very handy, and his eyes, even without the Sharingan, were sharp enough to spot the layout of traps. Sasuke would unavoidably use one of his shuriken to cause the opponent's death. Kakashi would always slip away, or it would turn out at the last minute that he was a bunshin, and if they were lucky, Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke would immediately converge on their target, probing for weakness in the opponent's defense. Naruto served as the team's hammer, main volley, counterattack expert, and ace in the hole. Sakura would immediately move if it were detected, allowing Naruto enough time to get to the target and use his strength to defeat their opponent. Even though he was learning taijutsu slowly and had poor taijutsu, Kakashi would feel sorry for any unfortunate person who was hit by one of Naruto's rib hooks or uppercuts. Naruto's primary goal is to throw opponents off balance, look for flaws, and try to identify anything that would give Sasuke, who is infinitely faster, an advantage since Kakashi's use of his Shinjuzanshuan Doppelus. Naruto has subtly sent Darklings underground to force Kakashi into the air, where you would be more vulnerable, and to ensure that no one would pull that stunt again. Kakashi frequently attempted to dissipate the Darklings by forcing them into the light with Doden Jutsu. But despite all of their strategies, they had a basic reason for their specialization. If they couldn't beat their opponent, they held them off until dusk. It was game over after that, as Kakashi was aware. Once darkness fell, Naruto's summons would appear everywhere, and their sensei would be surrounded by the terrible creatures before they could even get 3 feet away. The majority of Darklings were nimble and extremely vicious, but they lacked strength and speed normally. This wouldn't bother the gray-haired Junin, but when a couple of hundred of them are attempting to dismember you, it became problematic, especially since hurling a kunai at them only gives them more ammunition to use against you. Kakashi would never acknowledge it, but in order to escape long enough to cancel it, he had to employ a number of A and B rank strategies. In order to improve the fundamental abilities he sorely lacked, namely taijutsu, Naruto had to forego most of the night training sessions in favor of spending some time alone with Kakashi. Or at least Kakashi's clone. It goes without saying that Naruto had a very hard time persuading the Darklings to train on their own. Although their fervent commitment to the blonde's safety was praiseworthy, it seriously hindered his capacity to learn. The Darklings eventually permitted his training, albeit under their close supervision, after several attempts and a resolute vow from Kakashi, threatened with an excruciatingly horrible death, not to cause permanent harm. It began slowly, and Kakashi frequently used a straightforward leg sweep to end a round, but over the course of the following few weeks, Naruto was able to master hand-to-hand combat. His posture improved and his hand speed quadrupled to genin level. Basic jutsu came next, which was obviously shocking after numerous tries. There was some progress, but it was nothing extraordinary. Basic skills like Henge no Jutsu, Bunshin no Jutsu, and Kawarimi no Jutsu were very simple to execute at night, or at least in an area with plenty of shadows. In certain situations, they could even be performed automatically without the need for hand seals. However, when Naruto attempted to use the same techniques during the day, issues began to arise. Surprisingly simple, Kawarimi was unable to substitute himself with a log or rock. Instead, a very irritated and hostile Darkling, usually Doppelus, would do so in his place. This would be the ideal counter, but they could only appear once inside Naruto's coat, whereas Sasuke and Sakura could do it repeatedly without stopping. In order to enable multiple Darklings to exist during the day, Naruto began saving money to buy comparable coats and hats. Bunshin was the genin's most straightforward but also most challenging technique. Naruto was unable to clone himself without any complications. Doppelus, and more recently, a number of other Darklings, such as Gangarus, Raram, and Enelk, would enter the battle if necessary, but they could only engage in combat if it was nighttime, there were many shadows, or they were hiding beneath Naruto's trench coat and straw hat. Once more, Henge was feasible but constrained. Naruto could change his appearance and do so quite convincingly. He assumed multiple forms, such as that of an elderly woman and his sensei. Once more, though, this was only possible if he was in shadow or covered by his coat and straw hat. As soon as light entered, the facade fell apart. In addition to their frequent meetings and his late-night study sessions at the Academy Library in Konoha Public Center, Naruto rapidly transformed from his initial naive self into someone deserving of the moniker, Genin. We finally caught him again. Sakura clutched her chest as if she were going to pass out, her lungs famished. It was Team 7's fifth time being assigned to capture Tora, the feudal lord's wife's cat, and Sasuke muttered, under 12 hours. A new record. Taking care of missions involving animals was never easy, primarily because Naruto frightened them to death. He didn't mean to offend you. It was simply that the animals didn't like him at all. One mission required Naruto to tend to a parakeet, a pet bird owned by a local family. However, the squawking bird collapsed on its back, gasping for air. As soon as Naruto approached 2 meters, it was strange because the bird had never experienced a seizure before, but it was a minor one when they took it from the veterinarian. Devastated, Naruto was unwilling to return to the house and chose to accept another manual labor, D-rank, mission under Kakashi's supervision. Animal missions were strictly forbidden in Team 7's book after that point, but occasionally Tora would get away from his owner and they had to take over. As it turned out, Tora escaped so often that a team is almost always chosen to go look for her. Team 7 usually pursued him without Naruto, but recently they tried a different strategy. Tora vehemently moved away from the blonde genin, so they thought it would be best for Naruto to circle around where they thought Tora was and push him in the direction of Sasuke and Sakura. Tora is quite sly and frequently avoids both of their capture nets, even though it theoretically worked. Naruto, irritated with the cat, summoned a darkling behind Tora and grabbed her by the tail after they discovered her in a dark alley. A poor mistake on the cat's part. It was amazing to see the cat screeching. Kakashi wondered, "Oi Naruto, where is Tora?" Naruto was shouting at a small creature that was huddled beneath a small bundle of rags that he frequently carried for darklings so they could manifest in the daylight. "Tora, well, she is here. God damn it, Gibbs, stop it." Naruto said they had the appearance of tiny mummies aside from the large, writhing bulge in his right cheek. This darkling appeared to be quite normal. The darkling asked, attempting to keep its mouth shut, "WMM?" Naruto struck the side of its head and said, "Drop it." The darkling immediately spat out a very wet ball of fur. A rather heavy-set woman ran over to the pitiful mess and gave it a big hug. "Oh my baby," she exclaimed. Tora appeared genuinely happy to see its master again for the first time that Team 7 had witnessed after giving the money to the administration. The talkative wife of the feudal lord walked out while stroking her cat. "Come on, we'll take you home. How about some nice tuna?" she asked. Though he felt that most of the people in the room, including the Sandame, were amused by the situation, Naruto was relieved that the woman did not ask to chastise the entire team for the state of her cat. Within the rags that surrounded him, the darkling muttered, "I was going to eat that, boss." The Sandame whispered, "Okay, now what have we got here? Now, how about babysitting the Yakamishi twins?" "Yes, boss, take that one," joked the darkling. After learning from the Koido incident that whenever the darklings want to do something, it usually results in some poor child having nightmares for a week, the Sandame sighed and threw the mission scroll back into the pile. "Naruto, keep your whatever there under control. Don't make me give you the lecture again." Uncomfortably red in the face, Naruto muttered, "We'll deal with this later." The darkling immediately sulked and folded his arms in surrender. "Okay, here's one. Tilling the Takata farm. Turns out Tima injured his back and can't look after the place for a couple of days." Naruto could see Sakura letting out a sigh, but no one could hear it. The slight drooping in Sasuke's shoulders suggested that he was disheartened about performing hack shinobi work. Despite his impeccable poise, they desired a genuine mission. At the very least, a C-rank mission, but Naruto had a strong suspicion that he would have to fight for it. "Sandame-sama." The Hokage and Team 7 turned to the blonde with mild interest. "Could we have something a little more challenging?" The Hokage understood Naruto's meaning instantly and leaned back in his chair with a cunning smile on his face while holding a pipe. "Challenging? You mean like getting rid of those wasp nests in the southern quarter?" Even though Naruto tried his hardest to remain calm, he felt that was a pretty good return. "You know what I mean." Naruto looked at his two teammates on his right and said, "Something interesting that can test our skills." He sent out a "give me a hand here" vibe, knowing that Kakashi-sensei would not assist, not because he was lazy, but rather because well, maybe he was lazy, but that didn't matter. Sasuke took the stage and said, "We have been performing well above standards for a genin team. We have completed all 62 missions we have been allocated." "What about the Toppashi incident?" the Sandame asked, his eyes narrowing, but not in a mean or sarcastic way. Kakashi sighed. "She got her shoes back. That thing with Toppashi's cousin? It was her fault that she did not tell us she had a possum in the cupboard." "What about that ramen incident in the northern quarter?" Sasuke did not lose any sleep over the disaster a month ago. "We said completed, not completed perfectly. Besides, you can't prove it was us." As though daring Team 7 to argue, the Hokage's face was smiling as he asked, "What about the Koido incident?" Sakura added, "Technically, we did babysit the girl. and scared her halfway to death. She still has nightmares according to her parents. When the Darkling said, "Hey, Forehead-chan," said she had to go to bed, what did the girl say? Her voice became oddly childlike and effeminate, despite being severely distorted as the Darkling's teeth shone through the rags. He said, "No, my daddy lets me stay up as long as I want. So we educated her on the importance of going to bed on time." Ruffling around his desk, the Sandame picked up a piece of paper and asked, "Going to bed on time? By educated, do you mean stringing her up to the ceiling while saying, 'Go to bed or we'll swallow your soul'?" "She went to bed, didn't she?" Naruto smacked his forehead with his palm. Sakura punched Gibbs so forcefully that the wall it struck had a noticeable dent in its frame. "Come on, Forehead-chan. Back me up, oof," she said. Sakura exuded an aura that oddly resembled murderous intent, and even Sasuke appeared moved. "Don't call me Forehead-chan," she exclaimed. "Naruto, let's not forget that you skipped 4 years of training. Let's also not forget that it normally takes 4 months before a genin team will get even remotely close to a C rank. And finally, do I need to remind you that you are still lacking some basic skills required by every genin? Can you even perform a henge during the day?" Everyone knew the answer, but Naruto said nothing. Sarutobi felt a little guilty about lecturing the young blonde in front of his coworkers, but perhaps a little extra encouragement and a kick in the pants from his teammates would motivate him to go above and beyond. "I thought not until you reach that skill set and until I think you are ready, then it is D rank only missions for you." With all but one member of the team heading for the door, Kakashi went to the desk and grabbed the most recent mission sheet. Sarutobi raised an eyebrow and asked, "Something else, Naruto? What is the current record?" The Sandame's other eyebrow joined its brother's in shock as it read, "The record for most D-rank missions completed in 24 hours. Sarutobi pointed to an administrator nearby and said, "The record, huh?" The administrator immediately handed him a black scroll. "Let's see, current record for completing the most D-rank missions in a day is 54. How about a bet then?" Despite his lack of confidence, Naruto stood his ground, with his team following him slowly. "If we can break that record in 24 hours, you give us a C-rank mission." Not a beat was missed by the Hokage, absolutely not. "What? Why?" Sarutobi looked at the silver-haired Junin, who scratched his head and laughed nervously. "D-rank missions are for genin experience. But I am not entirely convinced that Kakashi would not give a helping hand in some shape or form." Naruto turned to see Sasuke step forward. In contrast to the blonde, he exuded confidence and had the most impeccable posture. "Send an independent investigator to make sure that he does not assist us." Sarutobi turned to face the Chunin, who was concealed behind a little mountain of scrolls, and asked, "HMPH, what do you think, Iruka?" His head jerked upward, staring at Team 7 and the Hokage. Iruka said, "It's their prerogative, but I feel I must warn them that many genin teams have tried to break it, but the record has been in place for nearly 14 years. The Hokage nodded. "True, but there seems to be a final issue as to the wagers." Naruto joked, "If we win, you give us a C-rank mission." Sarutobi saw all 3 genin pause at the thought, and he smiled mischievously, asking, "And if you lose?" It was Sakura who spoke first. "Kakashi-sensei has to give up those orange books of his for a month." The revealed eye of their sensei widened in surprise. "Huh, wait, what? Wait, don't put me in the middle of." Sarutobi looked forward to Kakashi finally making eye contact without those dumb books in his hand, and he said, "I accept that." Sakura, we have to talk." The Hokage looked at the 3 genin and asked, "Anything else?" When none of them answered, he offered a suggestion. "How about you do as many D-rank missions until both Kakashi and I say you are ready?" Sakura and Sasuke trembled under his stare, and while it wasn't an unreasonable request, they might be forced to perform hack shinobi work. For some time to come, Naruto appeared excited and cynical at the same time. Naruto's mouth formed a radiant smile and said, "Deal. Okay, come back bright and early first thing." "Nope, we'll take the missions now." Sarutobi gazed at the wall-mounted clock. It was almost 4 hours before business closed. "Expecting to complete all those missions in 4 hours, I appreciate your dedication, but that is impossible. If I remember correctly, I asked how many missions can be completed in 24 hours, not a day. That means we can start whenever we want." Since Naruto had 6 hours of daylight left and 10 hours of night left to finish the missions, and with those darklings who need bunchins, the Hokage silently cursed himself, saying, "What does it matter if you start now? It is going to get dark soon. Oh. Why didn't I think of that earlier, damn it." "Alright, Naruto, check the size of this." "Okay, Naruto, I will accept, but on one extra condition." Naruto sounded a bit too coy for his own good when he said, reneging on the bet, Sandane. But the Hokage ignored it, the pleasures of youth. Team 7 looked at their blonde comrade, who was perspiring, and said, every single mission must be perfect completions. Not one single complaint. Got it? If I get one, you lose the bet. They reasoned that every complaint they received was due to something those dumb Darklings did. No one would dare assume that the Darklings were not loyal, but they are only loyal to Naruto and will not listen to anyone else. They would strictly adhere to Naruto's instructions if he gave them. They were anything but obedient when one of his teammates asked them to do something. Furthermore, Naruto is still adjusting to his gift. Because the blonde is unable to control every single Darkling at all times, some of them are occasionally left to their own devices, which is when the problems start. If that is the case, there should be no missions that involve animals and babysitting. Sakura laughed. The Hokage pointed to the scrolls scattered throughout the room and said, that sounds fair, we have more than enough. I will keep the mission center open just for tonight so they can receive your reports. I will also inform the relevant clients about when their mission will be done. Sarutobi nodded at a few individuals strewn throughout the rooms who were going through the office's innumerable stacks of scrolls, selecting each mission based on their own standards. In just a few minutes, a little stack of 55 scrolls was placed in front of Naruto, who hurriedly stuffed them into his pockets before they disappeared into thin air. As he put his pipe back in his mouth, the Hokage nodded and said, I look forward to hearing your results. 23 hours and 59 minutes. Oh, Kakashi, be a sport and leave your entire Icha collection on my desk first thing in the morning. Although Kakashi's face was unreadable, Naruto sensed a depressed vibe emanating from him. Team 7 turned and moved slowly toward the exit. Oh, and Team Kakashi? They asked, turning to see the Hokage grinning genuinely. Good luck. Team 7 ordered their potential favorite meals while seated in front of Ichikaru ramen. Kakashi had once again perfected the eat without taking off his mask trick. Even though the meal was supposed to be informal, there was more excitement and tension than normal. Sasuke's cheeks were paler, and his jawline was slightly more pronounced. Sakura, on the other hand, appeared so excited that she was practically spinning in her chair. So team, have you got a plan? Sakura turned to her sensei and asked, plan? Kakashi handed Ayame his bowl and said, Sakura, you are going for the D rank record. There hasn't been a genin team that has successfully surpassed it in 14 years. You do not just go into it blindly without some kind of plan. Sasuke looked straight ahead and wrinkled his nose in disgust, saying, judging by the way Naruto talked, he is planning on using those Darklings as the primary method. The Darklings were helpful at times, no doubt, but their ruthless taunts really irritated him. Usually, Sasuke would simply give Naruto his trademark death glare, but Naruto would immediately attempt to scold him. The blonde made an effort to stop them and occasionally made them apologize, but it was clear that they were anything but. Names like emo freak were already offensive, but they soon turned into more obscene ones. Several weeks ago, Sasuke immediately set the entire training ground on fire after Goldbrick, the snobby Darkling, called him Orphan San. In addition, Sakura became so enraged that she gave Naruto a very nasty punch to the face. That immediately attracted the Darklings' attention, and despite their daily limitations, they were able to hurl a tree at Sakura like a kunai, narrowly missing her head. The fact that it was their equivalent of a warning shot did not help. The other members of the team soon realized that Naruto was the only reason the Darklings did not harm, maim, or kill them. Sasuke and Sakura wouldn't last long against them, even though Kakashi would hold his own if he was truly upset with any of them. Despite Naruto's insistence that they were summons, the lack of tattooed summoning seals, hand seals, or blood usage suggested a natural ability. The Hokage and a few other former Anbu conducted private investigations and discovered that the only known instances of a natural summons were in Iwa and Oni no Kuni, but they were unable to identify any additional information. I know it is not your preferred option, but it is our best shot and you know it, Naruto murmured. I will acknowledge that they can certainly save time, provided they are willing to help out, Kakashi said. But we both know that as a rare occurrence it takes more time convincing them than it does to actually do the mission. But once I convince them, they can perform a job in a fraction of the time it takes for all of us to complete one. That is another factor. At least a dozen Darklings will be needed to complete the mission in half the time, and considering they can only work en masse during the night, we have until sunrise to use them to their full potential. I have only seen about 200 Darklings around you at any one time, even during our night sessions. Like a little child, Sakura turned to the small bundle of rags clinging under Naruto's coat and asked, how many will we need in order to complete 55 missions in one night? Gibbs wondered, 55? In one night? I would say upwards of 1,000 ought to do it? Sasuke snorted, You make it sound simple. Watch to the attitude, Sasuke, like we said to the boss. The only limit he has is his imagination, he just has to think big. 1,000 Darklings? Sakura asked, her eyebrows going up in doubt. Very big. We are required to make 55 perfect completions. Can you control that many, Naruto? Asked Sasuke throughout the conversation. Naruto kept quiet while formulating a strategy. The three of them will be alone if Kakashi is not present, and Darklings have a tendency to get bored easily and start trouble if they are not occupied. This implies that Naruto cannot be everywhere at once to keep an eye on their progress, and that someone who is not a Darkling must give them instructions. The entire team raised their eyebrows when they heard the statement. With you delegating duties to them, they will stay in line. Darklings listening to us? Sasuke asked in a startled tone. Humor me. If I give them a mission, they will complete it and come back to me for another one, but during that time they have enough time to themselves to do something, and I will end up getting in trouble. However, if all three of us spread out, they will have less time to get into trouble. Sakura went pale. Naruto, be serious, as if they would listen to us they are more likely to try and pull my hair or throw another tree at me. Gibbs did not like what he heard, and Naruto felt a claw tighten around his leg. They will if I delegate full authority and issue a punishment should they not comply. Sakura frowned as she finished her ramen and said, well, as long as I am not partnered with that pervert, X-Ran. I still have not gotten over the fact that he tried to peek under my skirt. When Naruto said, I said I was sorry about that, his cheeks flushed. X-Ran, damn it. With a venomous voice, Sasuke snarled, neither I nor Goldbrick or Pollock will be held accountable for my actions if they are with me. Fair enough. Naruto was aware that there were enough Darklings to go around, but he was also interested in what would occur when nightfall arrived. 1,000 Darklings. There are how many of them? Gibbs didn't even blink. You know they won't listen to you. Slowly creeping up his spine, the darkness churned in his stomach. Darkness, please don't bother me. If you won't assist me, leave. Naruto, how impolite is my little shit becoming cocky? Are you growing bored? We will not receive a C rank if we fail this record. That means there won't be any conflict or bloodshed. I assumed you would be in a desperate need of assistance. We have plenty of sports here, so why should I help you get a C rank? The whole Inuzuka clan is pleading with us to eat them. Naruto heard the voice of the darkness. How about your sensei or your teammates? They might as well have the words, please kill me, permanently inked on their foreheads. Don't even make light of it. Images of his comrade's death flashed through Naruto's mind. Hardening his face, the darkness was enjoying the wriggling of its host. Oh, I'm serious, Naruto. The offer will never leave that table. All you need to do is reach out and take it. I'm friends with them. The darkness was equally astounded by Naruto's realization of his reaction, as evidenced by the abrupt halt of the black cloud that was engulfing his senses. Naruto is not a friend of my hosts. My ancestors don't require companionship. Naruto was left alone, at least temporarily, as the darkness subsided. However, keep in mind that I spent 12 years investing in you, Naruto, not because I like you, but only because of your potential for carnage. My patience isn't forever, but I am. Whatever you say is before. Naruto brushed the darkness aside. Although the darkness claims to have a great deal of power, Naruto felt in control of this gift of his aside from the odd outburst or irrational hatred or visions. Naruto. He heard a female shout, Sakura? Naruto turned to see his sensei and two teammates gaze at them inquisitively. Sasuke sighed, you were doing that zoning out thing again. Although Naruto may believe the darkness was just talk, it was extremely serious when it came to its secrecy. Yeah, sorry about that. I was just thinking. Despite all the jests and dismissals, Naruto recognized a real threat when he heard the darkness swear that it would act if he began to blab about it. Naruto appeared to retreat into his own world whenever he engaged in conversation with the darkness, where he would not even notice a head slap. Naruto insisted it was nothing, but his teammates found it odd because it occurred at random times. Of course, they had a different opinion. Sakura dismissed Naruto's odd trance, but she sounded worried when she said, you better not do that during these missions. It's funny, she thought, because I used to find Naruto's strangeness unsettling, but now I just consider it a small annoyance. I won't. Sasuke turned to the masked Junin and said, in any case, I believe it would be best in case the Darklings don't comply. Kakashi-sensei, how did the original team set the record? Kakashi pondered, but brushed the explanation aside as a fact. Kage Bunshin. Kage Bunshin. Yep, a special type of clone that has a real body, not a false image. Sasuke's gaze expanded. I would like to learn that. Could you teach us? Kakashi responded to the irritated Uchiha's glare with one of his signature blank stares, saying, unlikely. It is a Junin technique, Sasuke. You will need a lot of training. Even if you did have the Sharingan, it draws off chakra very quickly besides. Do you really expect to master that technique in less than 24 hours? Many claim that even without the mask, Kakashi would be a poker champion. Sakura asked, how did a Genin team use a Junin technique that well? Kakashi shrugged, what kind of team is that strong? Does it matter? I suggest you think of something fast, otherwise you will only get a C rank when I say you are ready. Kakashi flexed his legs, and if all three of you blindly rushed into this bet, then it may be a while. With a mixture of anxiety and trepidation, all three genin gazed at their bowls. It appeared that they all had the same, what have I gotten myself into, expression. Kakashi was silent for a minute before continuing. He quickly disappeared before they could turn to look at him, but he knew that their smiles had returned. But for what it is worth, I'll be cheering for you on from the sidelines. They all reached into their wallets when Naruto noticed Sakura pat the backpack on the ground beside her, but they discovered they were still short. Well gang, want to head over to my place and discuss what we will do from there? Sakura-chan, got the mission scrolls? Naruto asked. Wait a minute. Kakashi-sensei left us with the tab? Again? Yelled Naruto, who was a dine and dash expert in disguise. There was no reason why the blonde didn't anticipate it. Sakura took out several more bills and scoffed in disgust, asking, what kind of sensei sticks his students with his bill? Team 7 looked at the elderly man on the other side of the bench, who was grinning warmly, and said, never mind that. It's on the house, your sensei is not the only one who will be cheering for you. Naruto grinned and said, thanks, old man. He turned to see Sasuke jerk his head, signaling that it was time to leave. Trust me, we'll be back with the new record under our title. The sky was turning blood red in response to the sun's beginning to set. Gibbs, a small darkling, and the three genin made their home near Naruto's little hilltop cabin. As soon as they entered, they swiftly extracted every scroll and divided them into several piles, including those for administrative, non-darkling, manufacturing, lost and found, manual labor, and gathering. It was decided that one of the three genin would alternate between the 6 non-darkling missions, which dealt primarily with people, instead of one of the darklings who would prefer to frighten and or insult the clients. After the piles were in place, Naruto stepped outside to see the sky grow darker. Naruto turned to his two teammates, who immediately obeyed, saying, okay gang, this is it, you might want to take a step back. When the blonde sensed a tug on his pant leg, he looked down to see the diminutive Gibbs, who had shed the rags and wrappings that had been covering him to show off his small frame and bat-like ears. With its toothy grin, Gibbs said, remember, boss. Think big. You do that and the world is your oyster. Think big, huh? Naruto asked, closing his eyes and allowing his thoughts to wander. Tens, hundreds, and thousands were the first numbers that came to mind. Oceans without end, fields that stretched to the horizon and beyond, mountains made of piles of money, and enormous hills that rose to the sky around him. He sensed a drop in temperature and could hear movement and crackling. Naruto experienced an odd gurgling sensation in his stomach despite the unpleasant sensations. Caverns so long that the echoes could go on forever, and a void so deep that it was nearly excruciating. Naruto knew he could not stop and continued fighting. Sakura gasped and said, oh my god. Gibbs gave a little laugh that Naruto could feel. Look boss. Opening his eyes, Naruto looked directly into the innumerable eyes that peered back from the darkness. One darkling sneered, X-Ran. I thought I would never see you again. Damn it. Naruto was beaming from ear to ear as he looked out at the sea of darklings in front of him. There were so many of them that they extended past the clearing and encircled the forest, and they were all talking. Wow, I am so outta here. Is this the boss? Frutz, you magnificent bastard. How've ya been? Hey guys, I think I see a strip club in that town. Awesome. Let's steal some guy's kidney. Ha, ha. What is up Konoha? Where is the enemy? I want to eat an enemy. Blah, blah, blah. Where are the babes? I was promised there would be babes. Well, there is a hospital nearby. I am sure we can get into the nursery. Show me the money. Here, that is a frying pan. The darklings fell silent as Naruto said, hey guys, keep it down. It was oddly satisfying to have a crowd waiting for you to say something. Thanks. Now guys, I need your eye. Sakura placed a comforting hand on Naruto's shoulder and asked, are you okay? However, he immediately spat out an odd black liquid across the grass. Naruto? Are you okay? Frutz said, it's okay. Sakura-chan. He is just suffering from the blowback from summoning too many of us. Huh? The longer the boss learns, the more of us he can naturally manifest. He can summon more than his natural quota by concentrating, but there will be consequences. Consequences? Naruto asked, turning to face Gibbs, who appeared to tremble. You never told me about consequences. Gibbs raised his hands in defense and said, "Nothing major, boss. You will just not be feeling so crash hot for the majority of the time. Don't worry, your abilities are like a muscle. The more you exercise it, the better you will become." As more of the foul-tasting bile rose up his throat, Naruto moaned, "Ah." Frutz arched an eyebrow and asked, "So boss, what is the occasion? Do we get to babysit the Koido girl again?" When thousands of eyes turned from Naruto to him, Sasuke paused for a moment before saying, "We are going for the record, and we need your help." A startled one Darkling turned to Goldbrick, who immediately rolled his eyes. "You want our help?" he asked. "Is he serious?" With a look of disappointment and rage, Goldbrick glared at Naruto and said, "See what I've been talking about? At this rate we'll be lucky to maim a chicken, much less a person." Fruits' eyes briefly widened in surprise at the blue-eyed Darkling's contemptuous comment. "Quiet, Goldbrick." With an unwavering gaze, Goldberg said, "Screw you, Frutz. What is this record you're talking about?" As he presented the 3 little stacks to the Darklings, Naruto scowled and gave them a scorching look in return. Although they complained like spoiled children when he forbade them from doing something, the Darklings were generally a very amiable group who were loyal to him with a few notable exceptions, such as Goldbrick and his crew. Naruto felt that his forebears, whoever they were not a sociable group given Naruto's vow to the Hokage and his refusal to kill anything. Goldbrick and a few other Darklings didn't appear to enjoy being the blonde's subordinates. Goldbrick's hands held a scroll, which it read carefully, while its snake-like tail gripped another scroll tightly with the kind of venom reserved for murderers and pedophiles. Goldbrick, who was already frowning, spat out the mission title, "Transport 2 crates of apples to the Konoha Southern Market." "I am willing to bet that all these missions are very similar to this one." "Not exactly. Do we get to kill anyone?" "No." "Maim and torture somebody?" "Eat them?" "No to both questions." Goldbrick tossed the scrolls as though they held some infectious disease, saying, "Then they are the same." Naruto pointed to the rather ungainly-looking Sakura and Sasuke and said, "I should probably get this out of the way. You will have to partner up with my teammates. They will monitor your progress and depending on the mission you will report back to them." Naruto was certain that if there had been a bird that night, its chirping would have been deafening, but animals tended to disappear when Naruto was around, and this was especially true when his minions appeared. Naruto was forced to accept the unsettling quiet. Frutz appeared extremely concerned as he glanced sideways at Goldbrick's camp, which was staring down at them with murderous intent. "What?" The blue-eyed snake looked at the Darklings behind him and said, "See what I'm talking about? 12 years of waiting and we get a pansy?" In the back of Naruto's mind, he could feel the darkness laughing. "They won't listen, I told you." Frutz exclaimed, "Goldbrick." His once green eyes turned dangerously red. "Do you remember what we discussed? Are you that eager to die?" Goldbrick extended his hands in the "bring it on" position and said, "Oh, blow it out your ass, Frutz. Go ahead, assuming you can requisition me, and I doubt that, by the way. You think you can just scare us into line?" Frutz gestured behind him, and a number of other Darklings gathered behind him, displaying some unpleasant sharp claws. "I am not having this conversation. Especially in front of the boss." Goldbrick waved his hand at the blonde and said, "This isn't the boss, Frutz." One of the Darklings behind Goldbrick carved a tree into a makeshift sign that read, "Murder or bust." "This is a mistake. Never in my life have I encountered a boss as boring as Naruto. This is grounds for a strike." For the first time in a long time, a Darkling had called him by his name rather than the boss, and Naruto blinked. There was a look of anger in his face that Naruto had not seen since he first met Frutz, his unofficial right-hand Darkling. The green-eyed Darkling pulled a clawed hand to his mouth and yanked out one of his sharp teeth from its gums, which in the moonlight resembled a dagger. "Boss, maybe you and your friends should take a walk for a minute. We need to take care of some business first." Sakura ducked a little closer to Sasuke, sure that he could somehow protect her, even though she nearly shuddered at the idea of 1,000 Darklings fighting over their master not seeming to meet their carnage quota. Even though this appeared to be Darkling business, Sasuke surreptitiously took a kunai out of his pouch because he had witnessed firsthand what they were capable of, and there was no reason to be unprepared. The idea of breaking this record made the Uchiha shudder. As the previous Uchiha, he was expected to accomplish great things, but even he was aware that finishing 55 D-rank missions in less than 24 hours, now 20 hours, was nearly impossible. Naruto seems to be dealing with a civil war, so I guess I put too much trust in his abilities. Sakura clung to his clothing as he backed away slowly, matching his pace, and Sasuke sighed. There were cries of violence throughout the hills due to the Darkling's insanity. "Well, this going to be awesome. What are we going to go for? Shooting at 10 paces? Impale the Darkling in the head? I love that game. Hey, Gibbs, you're on the wrong side, get your ass over here. Ha ha ha. Oops, sorry. Wait a minute Goldbrick, this is a bad idea? What? Why? Because we did not come up with a victory dance. Do we really have to do this? Ha, relax boss. This will be over before you know it. I don't fight for boss, I would much rather hit a strip club. What? I fight for penguins. Shut up you buckets of sick. Thank you sir. To sir with love we. Hey. Scrum, throw a rock into the air or something. Hey Ruck, after I cut your head off do you want to get a cup of sake? Sure, why not? Ready, steady and go. Everything went to hell in an instant. Sakura, exclaimed Sasuke, get down. As the Uchiha ran into Naruto's cabin, the Kunoichi felt herself lifted off her feet. Sakura was brought back to reality by the sound of a door slamming. She looked up at the young Sasuke, and her cheeks turned as red as her dress once she realized she was lying in his arms. Sakura heard Sasuke's worried tone, but she had some trouble hearing him over the sound of her own heartbeat. You okay, Sakura? When her feet touched the ground, she said, I'm alright thanks Sasuke-kun. She was disappointed that her shining knight would not hold her for a little while longer. Sakura, grow up. Anger flooded the pink-haired Genin's mind. If you doze off while a war is raging outside, how will you get him to notice you? Her thumping heart froze in place as she instantly leapt to the wall and leaned to look. The Darklings were killing each other in the open, so any uncertainty about the destruction a Darkling could bring about was thrown out the window. The miniature war zone was covered in black sludge, and there was no blood, at least not red blood, as dozens of Darklings huddled together and tore off arms and legs like tissue paper. When she noticed that Darkling A was currently beating Darkling B with A's own severed head, it became clear that despite the cries and curses, none of them had died. Sakura ventured to steal a glimpse of the stoic Uchiha's face as the carnage went on, but all she saw was a sort of dread creep across his eyes, and she realized what he was thinking. All the time those things had been playing with them. If the Darklings fought with the same ferocity and hatred as they fought each other, Sasuke and Sakura would not have a chance. Even if there were a dozen, they would be vanquished quickly. Trees fell among the fighting. Some were used as rather large hammer devices, while others were the result of one Darkling being flung into it with more force than usual. There won't be much left on the hillside, though, if their fighting goes on any longer. Enough. Strange reddish gold irises radiated from the blonde with such intensity that his two teammates could feel the murderous gaze even though it was not directed at them, causing the temperature to drop several degrees as the Darklings stared at their master. Naruto screamed, "How dare you disrespect me?" as his voice reverberated throughout the valley. Goldbrick. I am your master. You are my servant, you will obey me. Goldbrick grinned his rather disagreeable smile and said, Blow me, Naruto. Why should I obey you, when you don't even have the balls to kill the Inuzuka clan? The blue-eyed snake was surrounded by several Darklings who snickered in unison. A boy we met had a plan. The Inuzuka clan's death was involved. However, the boss did give in even though we agreed. Our point was made. Despite our advice, we have an understanding. Goldbrick jabbed his tail accusingly at its master, saying, Darkness inheritors do not understand. Inheritors do what they want and kill whoever says otherwise. You are a disgrace. The darkness should never have picked you. Frutz shouted, Goldbrick, as he put his severed arm back in place. His teammates are there, shut up. For the first time, Goldbrick followed Frutz's advice, and after a rather awkward look at Sakura and Sasuke, who were probably debating whether to grill or deep fry them, he went on. I will not be part of this fiasco. You violate the very nature of our existence doing this dredge work. Naruto, I will not cooperate, and although you may try to order me and my crew, we will do everything to ruin what little standing you have in this village. Once enough people have tried to kill you, maybe you might become the boss we deserve. Despite not being able to see his face, Naruto appeared somewhat stunned, and Sakura and Sasuke were certain that the blonde was about to lose it under the strain. The Darklings shuddered visibly, but Naruto's voice was eerily calm and smooth, and he said, You know, Goldbrick, when you all first came to me you seemed so adamant about my control and authority as your boss. It's funny. You made me sound like royalty, a supreme ruler, a dictator. Goldbrick's and a few other Darklings' eyes narrowed. They knew where this line of thought was headed. This is not a democracy, Goldbrick. If I am a dictator, then my orders are followed without question and those that disobey me are removed. The glare deepened like hell. How would you and your crew like to be locked in a box for the rest of your existence? Bound, gagged and hidden away from the world. From what I have seen in our training sessions, you cannot die by Kakashi-sensei's hand or your own, but I think I can make sure you never come out again, whether it is through me or someone else. Goldbrick assumed the blonde was bluffing when she said, Bold claim, kid. But do you have the stones to back it up? Do you have the power? Eventually, Naruto said, probably not now. Naruto pointed to the village and said, but I am sure I will in the near future. So go ahead. Ruin my stead in Konoha, make me an outcast, but rest assured when I get the power, I will make every second of your existence and those that stand with you as miserable as possible. Granted, considering you laugh at pain. I don't know what would make a darkling miserable, but I will find out now. I dare you to call me a liar. Goldbrick. All eyes, both human and darkling, were fixed on Goldbrick, eagerly awaiting its next words. Everyone was shocked when Goldbrick grinned. Even Naruto appeared taken aback by the Goldbrick's unexpectedly upbeat attitude. That is what I was waiting for. What? Naruto asked, his eyes returning to their original blue color. Goldbrick said, it's gone now. He sounded pleased but a little let down. I was worried that you did not have the stomach for this, if so I would have bailed. Goldbrick's finger went up, but just then, I saw a fragment of your predecessor. Naruto, you do have that certain viciousness about you, not of the same caliber, but it is there. There might be hope for you yet. Naruto disliked being gazed at like a dissected animal on a very enthusiastic scientist's table. What? Goldbrick said with a broad smile and ivory white teeth. It does not matter, boss. We all saw the rage you keep locked up. At least we know it is there now, but you shouldn't keep it suppressed, boss. It is bad for you and boring for us. So does that mean you will help? For now? Goldbrick was pleased to see whatever it was, but Naruto wasn't particularly encouraged or confident. Naruto scowled and asked, can I at least call out my teammates? When his question was met with silence, he gestured for his two partners to exit the cabin, which they grudgingly did while maintaining an unblinking stare at the demonic swarm. X-Ran sighed, so boss, what now? Well, Gibbs shifted uneasily as Naruto scratched the back of his head. Will you work with them? All of you? Sasuke and Sakura were the focus of several demon eyes, particularly Sakura, who was aware that it made her uneasy. Many of the darklings groaned and muttered curses. Frutz himself appeared hesitant to voluntarily concur. Do we positively, absolutely, unequivocally, surely, unquestionably, really, truly, to a T, firmly, unmistakably, with absolute certainty, matter of factly, undoubtedly, indubitably, undeniably, flat out, no ifs and buts, have to? Yes. Frutz sighed deeply. Okay, boss, you win. With a thumbs up, Naruto turned to face his teammates. Sakura gave a small smile, but Sasuke appeared unimpressed and kept a watchful eye on the darklings as he got closer. Naruto turned to the throng and said, well, you heard them. They'll work with us. Okay guys, we have a lot of work to do and not much time to do it. The large group of darklings was then divided by Naruto into roughly 3 equal groups, with the exception of those that were entangled together, such as Marden, who resembled a cross between an octopus and a multi-headed snake. Now that you have your groups, you will be allocated to one of my teammates. Hey emo freak, I knew you couldn't stay away. Goldbrick's blue eyes peered from beneath Sasuke's shoulder, sending a shiver down his spine. This is our chance. We are going to be super duper friends. Naruto. Sasuke's teeth will grind if his voice does not reach the blonde. Naruto gave Goldbrick a scowl. Goldbrick, you and your group are not working with him. Goldbrick slithered beneath Sakura and curled up against the Genin's leg, swooning. What, you mean we get to work with the girl? He asked. What is this, forehead? Did you make a special request for us? How sweet. Sakura scurried back from the darkling's embrace, screaming, eek, in the hopes that Sasuke would rescue her from the deranged creature. Goldbrick sulked as he slithered back to his group, which was the largest of the 3. Goldbrick, you and your crew will be working with me. I will not allow you to torment my friends, so keep your mouth shut. Oh, and you are absolutely banned from going near the Aburame or Inuzuka compounds. If you do, I will be very angry. Despite the obvious disappointment in their alien eyes, the darklings nodded silently. Naruto looked at the leader with the green eyes. Frutz, you and your team are to go with Sakura. I trust you will look out for her, no funny antics. As 312 waist-high darklings slowly surrounded Sakura, who appeared to be very worried about her safety and well-being, Frutz and his group said, no probs, boss. This was similar to how hungry sharks would encircle wounded prey. Sakura selected a scroll from her stack and swallowed. Sakura was met with blank looks from the small sea of darklings, their bat-like ears twitching in scrutiny as they said, oh okay, well, our first mission is to clean up the mess in the central square, so let's do that. She shot a quick, begging glance at the little Frutz, who understood. Well, what are you gits waiting for? A free lap dance? Sakura felt the urge to take a shower as one darkling looked at her. Well, actually, that would be nice. Is she offering? That was rhetorical, dipshit. Frutz pounded the protesting darkling's head with great force. You heard the lady, now move it. As they made their way down to the village, Sakura looked at Frutz, who seemed to be smiling reassuringly at her. X-Ran, Dren, you and your group will be working with Sasuke. With a slight smirk on his face, Dren readjusted his glasses and said, "Okay boss, no problem." X-Ran's bat-like ears twitched as it offered a mock salute. Naruto clarified, "By the way, you can't call him names." The hills were filled with a collective of disappointment. Naruto growled and said, "No ifs and buts, Sasuke, if they give you any trouble, throw a kunai at their head that should shut them up." Naruto returned his attention to the Darklings who were scowling. "No, you cannot throw stuff back at him." The Darklings even paused when Sasuke flashed a slightly unsettling smile. For the first time, Naruto had a strong suspicion that the Uchiha might be abusing their position of power. However, I guess this is what happens when you call someone emo freak. For a long time, with a feeling of silent discomfort, the second group of Darklings gathered around the boy with the raven hair, and Naruto pondered. Sasuke jerked his head and said, "Let's go." His small battalion of 338 Darklings followed without even sneering. Naruto finally looked back at his group as Sasuke descended the hill and headed toward the village. The bulk of the sizable unit made up of the remaining 350 Darklings was composed of Goldbrick and his entire crew. Despite their claims to the contrary, Naruto had doubts about their willingness to follow his teammates' instructions. Goldbrick perched on top of the head of a massive Darkling that dwarfed Naruto, its tail quivering a little in response to its master's stare. "Are you guys ready?" With a silky voice, Goldbrick said, "We got all night, boss." Naruto sensed the rumbling and patter of feet of various sizes and shapes following him to Konoha. "Then let's go. Our first mission is in the western quarter." "Hey boss, after this is done can we hit a strip club?" Naruto whispered. "Maybe, really?" Goldbrick's eyes glowed brightly. "No, god damn it." Kiba was startled awake by a familiar howl. His feet thudded toward the door as he jumped out of bed. Tossing his bed linens to the ground, Kiba stared out into the night at the small white dog that was barking close to the paddock. "Akamaru, what's wrong?" Kiba asked, sensing he could even smell what his companion was so worried about as he drew closer. "Naruto." As his sister Hana gazed from a chair in the adjacent kitchen, Kiba turned to face the source of the voice and said, "He's nervous." They all are. Sitting around her in a slightly dazed but unmistakably alert manner are her beloved Haimaru triplets. "Where's Mom?" Currently near the main kennel. The older dogs are fine, but she is checking up with younger pups. They're having trouble sleeping. Kiba placed a soft hand on his white charge and turned to face the open windows, saying, "His smell is everywhere. Are we okay?" Hana's eyes darkened as she said, "The smell lingers over the entire village." Mom received word from the Hokage. Apparently Naruto is going for the D-rank record. He seems to be using those Darklings or whatever to complete it.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.